Story 1. My wealthy husband made our daughter turn against me in a nasty divorce. Years later, she came crawling back after he abandoned her for a new baby. I, 32F, was in a relationship with my ex-husband, Matthew, for 5 years, and we were married for 4 years. Everything seemed perfect in the beginning. He was loving, came back home on time, was affectionate, and our relationship felt solid. I thought Matthew was the one for me, but as you can anticipate from the title, everything quickly changed after our marriage and especially when I got pregnant with our daughter, Elena. You see, my parents haven't been in the picture since I was 17, as they were drug addicts. I started to live with my grandparents and went to community college to get a degree. During this time, I was working part-time at our local cafe as a waitress, which is where I met Matthew. He would come to our cafe for his daily coffee run. One day, out of nowhere, he asked me out. I was a bit unsure at first, but decided to take a chance. And the rest is history. Matthew comes from a wealthy family, and I didn't know this at that time, but he would love-bomb me a lot in the beginning. He would surprise me with thoughtful gestures, extravagant dates, and expensive gifts. Matthew made it seem like he was genuinely invested in our relationship, and I couldn't help but be swept off my feet by the charm he exuded. His family's wealth played a significant role in shaping his lifestyle, and he spared no expense when it came to impressing me. As our relationship progressed, we decided to take the next step and get married. My grandparents came to our wedding and were extremely happy for me since they loved Matthew also. Initially, everything in our marriage seemed to fall into place. However, things took an unexpected turn when I noticed a notification on his phone from a girl on Facebook whom I didn't recognize. In a moment of insecurity, I decided to check his phone, something I had never felt the need to do before. To my surprise, I discovered he had been messaging random women to see if they were single. It was quite apparent that my husband was flirting with them in the text messages. He was also telling them how he was a widower and his wife passed away early. I realized that he was saying these lies to gain sympathy from women so they would feel inclined to go out with him. This revelation left me in shock, and I couldn't help but take screenshots of the messages and usernames for future reference. I then confronted him about it, and my husband immediately attempted to comfort me, insisting that it was just a one-time mistake. In my emotional state, I couldn't help but ask if he had gone on dates or slept with other women. This question seemed to anger him, and he started shouting at me that I had no proof to accuse him of something like this. I felt bad hearing this since it was true that there was no sign that he had physically met with them. Matthew then told me that what I had done was an invasion of his privacy, and he was willing to forgive and forget as long as I let this thing go as well. Like a fool, I agreed, thinking that this might just be a one-time mistake. What I will never forget is that this incident exposed a side of him that I had never seen before in all our years together. While he had occasionally shown anger before, this reaction to me confronting him was unprecedented. Eventually, this cheating incident started happening more and more. Every time I would talk to him about it, hoping that he would change, he would continue lying and gaslight me into staying with him. I have to admit that during that point in my life, I didn't even have the balls to leave him. I had no money or assets to my name. I knew that Matthew gave me a comfortable life despite his discrepancy, so I would try to convince myself, thinking that he was great in other aspects. At least, I was so in love with him that I never mentioned his abuses to my own grandparents, even though they would sometimes feel like there was something wrong. I don't know why, but I just didn't want to admit to anyone that I was unhappy with him. When I got pregnant with Elena, I was over the moon to have a baby daughter. Matthew seemed unhappy when I broke the news to him, but I thought he would eventually come around. Unfortunately, things started to get worse from then. Being a first-time mother, I realized that I needed to start setting up a nursery for our baby, for which I needed funds. I tried talking to Matthew about it so we could go and shop for the baby together, but to my shock, he got really mad at me. He started calling me a gold digger and said that I was ruining his life. I was heartbroken hearing him accusing me suddenly like this. That night, I cried myself to sleep, worrying about my and my baby's future. I didn't know where to go if he decided to leave me, but the next day, Matthew acted like nothing had happened. He told me his mom would be coming and helping me out with the nursery. I was confused but agreed. When his mom came, She helped me out with everything but didn't really bother to check how I was doing. This is how his parents had always been. They somehow looked down on me for coming from a lowly family, and they expected me to take care of their son like a maid. Throughout my pregnancy, Matthew kept switching between acting normal and exploding in anger towards me. He would go on rants about how he felt stuck with me and how he wished that child was never born. I felt stuck and didn't know what to expect. It was too late now to terminate my pregnancy. As the baby's due date got closer, our home became more tense, and it took a toll on me emotionally. When Elena was born, I knew that I had to protect this baby no matter what. Now I had one more life I was responsible for, so I knew that I could not handle Matthew's mood swings and emotional abuse anymore. I needed to find a way to earn money so I could save for a rainy day. Once Elena was a year old, I started looking for jobs that I could do from home. In my search for a more stable and reliable work-from-home opportunity, I came across a customer service position with a reputable company. The job involved handling customer inquiries and resolving issues remotely, allowing me to maintain a flexible schedule while taking care of Elena. This new job brought a sense of financial independence, but it also marked the beginning of more conflicts with Matthew. In the beginning, he forbade me from getting a job, saying that it was not needed, but I was determined and I persisted. I told him how I was taking care of Elena and the rest of the household work, so what I did during my free time should not be his concern. As my income increased, so did his resentment. He started accusing me of neglecting my responsibilities at home, despite my continuous efforts to balance work and motherhood. The emotional toll was getting overwhelming, but I knew that I had to bide my time. I needed to work and save money so I could have the option one day to walk out of this marriage. When Matthew could not pick a fight with me, he would use our daughter against us. He even taught our daughter the B word and would encourage her to use it on me if she didn't want to listen to me. He knew the only way he could get to me was through my daughter, so he would spend a lot of time with her and pollute her mind about how I didn't love her enough and how he was the only parent she could depend on. Now, if you were thinking, why didn't I stop this? I did try my best, but daughters are somehow closer to their dads. Elena chose to believe and trust my husband over me since he was the fun parent, while I was the parent who would enforce rules. Fast forward to when Elena turned 15 years old. I found my daughter exchanging nudes with a 23-year-old guy when I walked into our bathroom by mistake and saw her clicking selfies. I immediately confiscated her phone and checked her messages to see all the inappropriate messages that they had exchanged. Elena started shouting at me that I had no right to take her phone, but I didn't care. I called the guy she was talking with and asked him if he knew that she was just 15 years old. He seemed horrified hearing this and told me how my daughter had lied to him about her age, and he had proof about it. He then apologized and assured me that he would be deleting her chats and photos and would never contact her again. Hearing this, Elena started screaming at me about how horrible of a mother I was and how she wished I was dead. She abused me some more and then locked herself in her room. When Matthew came, I told him about everything, but he seemed surprisingly calm. I got suspicious and asked him why, as a father, he was not reacting. This is when Matthew revealed that he had known all along that she had been talking to a guy since Elena had shared with him about her relationship. He did say that he had no idea about the guy's age since Elena never mentioned that. I was shocked, to say the least, and started yelling at him about how he could let his 15-year-old daughter think it was okay for her to date a guy he had never even met. Matthew acted nonchalantly and told me that this was quite normal for teenagers. I was disgusted hearing this, and this is when I decided that I had enough. I told him that our daughter was a child and it was his responsibility to have protected her instead of letting her send nudes to a 23-year-old guy. Clearly, he didn't deserve to be a father, so I announced that I was leaving him. Matthew started saying how I was completely overreacting and that I was being a little too much. I didn't wait to hear more from him and walked upstairs to pack a bag for myself. By this time, I had saved enough to put a down payment on a place in my name, so I was not afraid to leave Matthew anymore. By this time, my grandparents had passed away, and they had left behind a small fortune for me, so I knew that I was ready to leave this man so I could protect my daughter. I told Elena to come with me, but to my surprise, she refused. I told her that I was leaving her dad and she needed to come with me, but Elena told me how I was the worst parent in the world for breaking up the family and that she preferred living with her dad, who could get her everything that she wanted, rather than with me. I was at my wit's end and started pleading with her, telling her how she needed to be with me, but Elena refused. Matthew laughed in my face and told me to get out of his house since Elena had already made a decision to stay with him. Watching me walk out of his house, he taunted how the trash was finally taking itself out. It hurt me to leave my daughter behind with this toxic man, but I needed to get my affairs in order first. I thought Elena would eventually come around. I met and hired a strong divorce lawyer who understood my predicament. We served Matthew's divorce papers. I didn't want a single penny from him, but Matthew, on the other hand, demanded that I pay him back for all the money he claimed to have spent on me throughout our marriage. It was utterly laughable since I had been a dedicated housewife, managing our home and taking care of his needs without any financial compensation. The audacity he had to consider it him spending money on me left me incredulous. Despite my willingness to forego any financial settlement, Matthew remained stubborn in his demand. The situation escalated quickly, and our respective lawyers attempted to negotiate a fair resolution. However, Matthew was unyielding, not only about the financial matters but also regarding custody rights over Elena. I knew he was doing this just to make it harder for me to leave him. As the divorce proceedings unfolded, my husband played his cards well. Although he lost his stand on demanding any money from me, since the judge observed that I had worked hard to serve him, so he had absolutely no right to ask me for money, he successfully convinced our daughter, when it came time for the custody hearing, that she should stay with him. He tricked her into standing against me in court, so when the judge asked for her opinion, she started saying how abusive and controlling I was. I was heartbroken to hear my own daughter say these lies by portraying me as this big villain. I tried to explain how she was talking to an older guy while being a minor herself, but Matthew and Elena refused my allegations. As a result, Matthew was granted full custody, and I was ordered to pay a hefty child support to him every month. For me to be able to pay him this child support, I knew I wasn't earning well enough at that time to be able to pay this much. During this time, I was still getting settled into my new life as a single parent and had a lot of lawyers' fees to pay as well. While Matthew knowingly had dragged this whole thing out, I was still in shock after the verdict since I still couldn't imagine that Elena would do this to me. She had slowly become exactly like Matthew, a manipulative and a liar. This child support was also unfair when I was the one who had worked hard to protect her from him. Ultimately, I was left burdened with this colossal child support debt that I was now unjustly going to be forced to pay up. Shocked by her betrayal, when I confronted Elena regarding that, she smirked, saying how it served me right to now pay for her while she could live with her dad and do whatever it is that she wants. I tried to reason with her, saying how I was only trying to protect her, but to my dismay, she stated that she didn't need any protection, and this is why she hated being my child. She remarked why I couldn't be more like her dad and told me how Matthew had promised her his entire inheritance. And in her eyes, that seemed to outweigh any loyalty to the mother who had loved and cared for her. I was shocked to hear her so casually admit this. From then on, I knew that I needed to cut off all ties with her and Matthew. If this is what Elena wanted, then I was going to grant her wish. I have spent the last 3 years paying child support while going into debt, but making sure to not miss any child support payments since I didn't want to pay any fines or be dragged to court again until Elena turned 18 years old. Then she was completely her dad's responsibility, and I was finally free. These last 3 years have been very, very hard on me, yet I have persevered. I've been promoted twice and earned quite well. Currently, I live alone in this flat quite peacefully. Throughout all this, neither Matthew nor Elena have tried to talk to me. Yesterday, while working from home, there was a ring on my doorbell. I opened the door to see Elena standing on my doorstep looking distressed. My eyes widened in shock to see her. It had been 3 years since I had seen her face. She smiled at me politely and asked me if she could come in. Still in shock, I let her in. Elena looked uneasy as she entered my flat. The air was thick with tension, and I couldn't fathom why she would show up after 3 years of silence. She nervously sat down, and I cautiously took a seat across from her. After an awkward silence, Elena finally spoke up. She started by apologizing for her past actions, acknowledging the pain she had caused me when she was a teenager. Her eyes welled up as she began to share the details of her tumultuous relationship with Matthew, her father, for these last few years. Elena explained that Matthew had started dating shortly after our divorce. His new girlfriend didn't share the same affection for Elena. This would lead to constant clashes between the both of them. When her stepmother became pregnant, Matthew shifted his entire attention to his upcoming baby and forgot Elena completely. She slowly started realizing how shitty of a parent he was. He didn't really care about any of her interests, and now that he had a brand new baby, he didn't bother about her at all. Recently, things escalated when the stepmother falsely accused Elena of trying to harm the baby as Elena was jealous of her child. Elena told me how this was a blatant lie, but the stepmother somehow convinced Matthew to the point where he decided he wanted nothing to do with Elena anymore. She told me about the heated arguments, how Matthew told her to get out of his house, and the subsequent fallout. From her shaky voice and waterworks, it was clear that Elena was in a vulnerable position. She started pleading with me to let bygones be bygones and allow her back into my life, arguing that I owed it to her as her mother. My initial shock turned into a mixture of emotions: compassion, anger, and confusion. It was difficult to digest the sudden twist of events. However, I couldn't ignore the years of hurt and betrayal. As she sat, tears streaming down her face, begging for support, I maintained my resolute resolve. I reminded her of the debt she indirectly contributed to during my divorce proceedings, the lies she told for her father, and the toll it took on my life. I told her how hard I had to work to pay for her child support and the debt that I had accumulated as a result while she lived her best life with Matthew. With a polite smile, I told her that she wasn't welcome back into my life until she could somehow find a way to clear the debt. Elena started arguing, saying how she had no one else to ask for help. I told her it was none of my business, and she needed to get out of my house since I wanted nothing to do with her. She looked at me in shock, but I got up and opened the door for her. She walked out of my flat still in disbelief. Although a part of me is okay with this decision due to the scars from the past that remind me of the pain she had inflicted on me during the custody battle and the subsequent years of child support payments, there is also a small part of me that feels sorry for her. I debated kicking my daughter out after how she lied during our divorce proceedings and forced me into debt. Date 1. I read your comments. Though there weren't many, I took every NTA and YTA into consideration. It has made me realize I need to have a serious chat with Matthew regarding Elena. It's sad that he is such a shitty person and was able to manipulate our daughter so much that she never maintained any contact with me. I also called Elena to find out where she is staying, and she told me she was at her boyfriend's place. I told her that I would talk to Matthew about it and make sure that this issue would be resolved. To everyone asking why I didn't ask my ex-husband for any money, it's because I honestly wanted nothing from him. When I made up my mind to leave him, I just wanted him out of my life, and he decided to manipulate our daughter into framing me as a villain. Since he abused me emotionally and financially, it was difficult for me and my lawyer to prove that. At this point, I honestly don't care since I am able to lead a comfortable life on my own without ever taking his help, which I'm proud of. Also, some of you have asked me why I didn't try fighting for custody again. Well, when your own child doesn't want to live with you and openly admits that she has chosen her father because of his wealth, how can you convince her? Unfortunately, fathers have more rights when it comes to children, and given my mental and, at that time, physical health, I didn't want to go back to court. Even when I was going into debt for paying the hefty child support, I didn't care and worked hard just to start leading a normal life again away from Matthew. Update 2. Yesterday, I braced myself for a difficult conversation as I dialed Matthew's number, preparing to confront him about Elena's unexpected visit and the troubling revelations she shared. I plunged into the heart of the matter, recounting how Elena had turned up on my doorstep. Matthew's initial reaction was defensive. He claimed he was exhausted with both his wife and Elena clashing all the time. He even said he felt Elena was a danger to his new baby. I got really mad hearing all that. I reminded him that Elena was his own daughter, someone who always looked up to him and who even went as far as lying for him when he wanted her to. I told him he needed to treat her better, that he couldn't just push her away like that. I also told him that he had no proof that Elena had harmed his baby in any way except for his new wife's words, and that he needed to start listening to Elena's side of the story as well. Though Matthew attempted to cling to his justifications, I sensed a glimmer of guilt flickering beneath the surface, a reluctant acknowledgement of his own failings as a father. Eventually, I got through to him. He apologized for kicking Elena out. I suggested he talk to his parents and ask if Elena could stay with them since she was crashing at her boyfriend's place. After some back and forth, he agreed to do so. I finally felt relieved. Today, Elena texted me saying she's with her grandparents now. It's a small step forward, but at least she's in a safer and more stable situation. I told her that although we couldn't repair our relationship immediately, we could take small steps towards it. Update 3. It's been 4 months since my last update, and things have really changed for the better, especially between me and Elena. Surprisingly, Elena decided to move back in with Matthew after he apologized to her face-to-face. He also had a serious talk with his new wife, asking her to treat Elena better. Since then, things at Matthew's house have been calmer. There's more harmony in their place, and Elena seems happier and more confident. We did meet a few times, and although it is awkward, I understand that I need to forgive her for the past. Contrary to popular opinion, I haven't forgiven my ex-husband, nor am I back in contact with him. I had to talk to him last time for the sake of Elena, but that was it. I have been open to repairing my relationship with my daughter only since she has realized her mistakes. I'm proud of the person she's becoming every day. Our relationship is getting stronger every day as we work through our issues and support each other. There are still challenges ahead, but I'm hopeful. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My best friend kept touching and flirting with my boyfriend, so I confronted her, but she lied about it. Then I found out they'd been secretly sleeping together for months, and all our friends knew. Hey everyone, my 24F best friend, 24F, is too handsy with my boyfriend, 26M, and I think it's inappropriate. I know I should be careful calling someone best friend in a post like this, but I don't know how else to call Jessie. Our parents are great friends, so we grew up together, and she kind of had my back in high school. Long story short, on the teenager food chain, she was on top, and I should be on the bottom, but nobody messed with me because I was Jessie's friend. Jessie is one of those people who require attention. I never minded, though. Nobody is perfect, right? But now that I have my first real boyfriend, she doesn't know how to behave. Every time we are together, she is really handsy, always touching his arms, running fingers through his hair, complimenting him, and now she even started with prank spankings on the butt. You know? I just feel really uncomfortable with it. Maybe it's normal? I mean, Jessie has a lot of guy friends, so maybe this is okay? My BF never thought much of it either. Am I just overreacting? She is super pretty, so maybe I'm just jealous. Anyway, yesterday something really threw me off. BF had to do some work, and I had a book thing, hobby. So we decided to meet later at a friend's house. They were getting together to drink and so on. BF finishes work early and calls me, but I don't really need him to come over to the book thing. I know he doesn't like it, so I just tell him to go to friend's house. Then I start getting texts from Jessie, all like, "Girl, you got to come to this party now. Your BF is wasted, lol, we so drunk. You need to come and stop us. I can't behave myself if you don't get here soon." And so on. The book thing took longer than I thought, and I was just getting madder and madder, but I am a very non-confrontational person, so I deal with it. I call BF when it's over because I don't feel like going to this party anymore. But I was his ride, so I ask him if he needs me to come pick him up. He says, "Sure." I get there and don't even go inside. I am ready to release the hounds of hell on him, but he gets in my car, and he is stone cold sober. I ask him if he was drinking and then show him Jessie's texts. He gets super upset and says she was lying. He wasn't even hanging directly with her, but catching up with a friend who just came back to town. He says I should have texted him letting him know what she was saying, so he could confront her about it since you don't ever seem to be able to give that girl some boundaries. Now I'm thinking maybe I should talk to Jessie, but maybe she was just drunk and annoying me, 'cause she wanted me there? I don't know. I mean, this girl was really nice to me growing up when she could have been a beach. I don't like how she behaves around him, but at the same time, I don't want it to look like I don't trust her. Is there a polite way of going about it? Or should I maybe wait and see if this happens again? Am I overreacting? Date 1. Yesterday, I posted here about how my best friend Jessie is a bit handsy with my boyfriend, and it makes me feel uncomfortable. I am very thankful to all those who commented, especially the ones who encouraged me to say something. I don't like arguments, so those were very important to me. Thank you. Last night we were alone, 'cause she wanted me to help her choose clothes for an event. I was at her place, so I thought I should say something. I wanted to say something. I was very polite and just said that I knew she meant no harm, but I didn't feel good about it, so I asked her if she could tone it down. I should have said stop, but I guess I'm weak. She didn't really say anything mean, but her attitude was a bit off. I think she was looking at me in a scornful kind of way, and the way she smiled once I was done talking, it just felt weird. She didn't say anything else but, okay. And we just moved on to choosing her clothes, and I left. After, we were supposed to go get something to eat, but she said she was tired. I am not dumb. She was hurt. So I texted a common friend, more her friend than mine, and without getting into details, I just told him that I talked to Jess about something that was important to me, but that I was afraid she may have gotten the wrong idea from it. The common friend said, "Look, I don't want to get involved, but you should watch it." I asked what he meant. He said, "Nothing, just watch it." A little while after that, he texts me back and says, "Changed my mind, I do want to get involved," and sends me a bunch of prints of texts going back and forth between him and Jessie. It basically starts with him asking her if the two of us had a fight, 'cause I was worried. He was kind with his words. I don't mind him stepping in. And then just a non-stop stream of her being horrible. She says I have a big mouth and was judging her behavior, 'cause I'm a prude who doesn't know how to be around guys. How she taught me everything I know about having a life. And how dare I tell her what she can or cannot do, or how I should thank her for even having a boyfriend at all. Common friend actually called her out for being rude and no friend of mine. After the prince, he told me, "I'm done with her, I give up, and you should watch it." He also said it was okay if I told her I had the prince. I didn't know what to say. I mean, she is not 100% wrong, but even though I know that, it really hurts to read those. This morning I wake up and see she texted me late at night. She says she knows Pete sent me the prints and she didn't mean to be rude, but it's ridiculous that I am jealous of her because if she wanted my BF, she could just have him. "You want me to prove it?" is what she meant. So I'm being silly and should drop it. She ends it with kisses and a joke, so I don't know if she was being playful, apologizing, threatening, or being pragmatical. I didn't answer her yet. I don't know what to say. Should I even say something? Or should I just let it go? I wish I could talk to someone about this, but I am very private. I usually go to Jessie with these things. Some comments where OP has replied, comment. Sounds like this person is completely wrapped up in their own head and has a serious case of overthinking their importance in life, especially others' lives. Obviously, we're all going to tell you to drop her because she's not a desirable person to be around if that's how she acts/talks to you in person and behind your back. This person thinks they own you enough so that they've decided to let you have your BF. EF that shit. Also, show your guy everything that's happened 'cause guaranteed she's going to go after him. P. I suppose you are all right. It just gets me, you know? It's a 20 years long friendship. I keep thinking maybe this is a misunderstanding. She didn't mean it, or she is going through a hard time and doesn't know how to deal with it. I am just trying to make sure I am not overreacting, so I needed some outside perspective. As for my BF, I think he would turn her down quite fast. He doesn't really like her. He just hangs with her because of me. He's always saying that he'd rather not and all, so it's unlikely that they'd be alone together. But I will talk to him. Thank you for the heads up. Turns out she already went after him. I was stupid. Update 2. My boyfriend is having sex with her. A friend convinced some other friends to send me prints of texts between themselves and either my BF or best friend. They are pretty clear. I confronted my BF. He looked lost, said he loves me, and it was just sex. He says Jessie kept throwing herself at him, teasing him, and he said he didn't like her, but I still wanted to hang. He said he just had sex with her to see if she would move on and leave him alone, and that it only happened a couple of times. Says he won't do it anymore. He doesn't even like her. He loves me, asking me to please forgive him. From the texts, once I finally made it through them all, I think that Jessie went to the party where me and BF met, 'cause she wanted to hook up with him. She had it bad for him, but he didn't feel the same way. She was trying to get him to break up with me and then to get me to break up with him. It worked. As of yesterday, he is a single man. In some of those texts, they are talking about some of the hookups. I feel like throwing up. I blocked him 'cause he was still trying to get in touch. I ghosted her, but she just sent me a message saying she just heard what happened and, this was probably for the best, right? And I feel like effing screaming. I don't know if this is an update or just me venting. Thanks for listening either way. Edit. I don't want to sound melodramatic or sappy or anything, but you all brought me to tears. We keep hearing about how it is insanity to rely on the internet for personal connections, but I just lost a boyfriend, a best friend, and a whole group of friends, and instead of feeling alone, I am more and more feeling like, hell yeah, that was the right thing to do. I will be okay. It still hurts, but not as much as it would had I really been alone. I can't even begin to thank this sub. I really don't know what to say. Even on my previous posts that didn't get as many responses, it was some of the comments there that made me approach the cheating thing, knowing I had to break up and move on, so it changed my life in this moment, and considering I will be doing a lot of soul searching on toxic relationships, this probably changed my life for good. So thank you all so much for reaching out to a stranger. This community is so precious. And I got a gold. I don't even know what to say. Thank you so much. I don't mean to sound ungrateful, but I don't even know how much a gold costs. And this is an alt account, so it won't really be used. Is there any way I can return it to the sender? Some of you are asking for an update. I might in a while if there is something new to tell. Right now it's just more of the same. I don't think I will be able to answer all the comments, but I'm trying to at least answer the ones with questions. Thank you. Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1. Well, yeah, I would just ditch that whole friend group and start trying to find new friends. My God. That's some effed up shit. P. Yep, down and done. I think I'm being too permissive with the word friend. It was going on for months. Everyone knew. Nobody had the decency to tell me. It was only the one friend who wasn't even that close who stood up for me. Comment 2. You also can't make her hurt. She has no respect for you and clearly doesn't care, so it will be impossible anyways. It would have the same effect as a drunk stranger telling you that you're awful. It might make you angry, but you didn't care about that stranger, so what they say is irrelevant. Also, I can't imagine anything so utterly not worth your time. The delightful side effect of just ghosting is that they will stew in it. They want the reaction, but they get none. They realize they lost all their power and never get to know and feel that satisfaction that comes from getting the reaction you wanted. OP. Oh, I get what you mean. She is still texting me. I didn't mention one detail, 'cause it wasn't important. We were all traveling together soon. My family paid for some of Jessie's expenses. She is messaging me about the vouchers since I have them all. This effing woman can't even wait a day to ask. It's like she suddenly remembered she still needs me. I mean, I am not giving them to her either way. Trip is off. Can't she tell? Absolute truth. Comment 3. She would be more hurt by no response at all to anything, ever. I go no contact. P. I'm very much thinking the silence treatment will be the way to go. I think she just realized she needs me for the trip. She has been aggressively trying to contact me. Now she is saying that she liked my BF first, and I was the one who stole him, so she is the one who should be mad. I know I should just block her everywhere. But is it petty that I'm having fun watching her squirm? I wanted to have the last word, but not saying anything is driving her crazy. Comment 4. LL. But seriously, that is one of the stupidest things I have heard. It is like saying, hey, babe, I jumped off a cliff because somebody was really pestering me to do it. Edit. I feel for you, OP, but what an excuse. P. I confess I almost fell for it. How pathetic is that? He was saying he cared about me, it was just a mistake. He thought she would back off, and I felt it was a bad decision on his part, but maybe it made sense and I could forgive him. Then he said something like, and I didn't even like her. You were the one who always wanted us to hang. That's when my brain joined the party, and I was like, is he seriously trying to blame this shit on me? More comments made by OP. Most disgusting part is that it is a trip we would take together with my BF and some other friends, so she really thinks I would let my family pay for her to go on vacation with my ex who she cheated on me with? I'm starting to think this woman is sick. Like for real. I just went straight to venting, didn't I? Sorry. Well, it was all Pete, really. After she texted she could get my BF if she wanted to, I just answered back, WTF Jesse? And she LOL'd as if it was a joke. After that, Pete texted me, asked me if I was alone. He was really kind and told me everything. Said he had proof and asked if I wanted to see it. I said yes. He had gone after our friends and convinced them to send him prints. He's really well liked by everyone, and he was the one who said enough. Pete is gay, by the way, just in case anyone jumps the gun like my mom did and thinks he did this because he's interested in me or something. He's not, he is just a decent person. No, I didn't get prints between BF and Jesse. I guess I went straight to venting and didn't give much details, wasn't expecting this response. There was this friend, Pete, who convinced 3 other friends to send him texts between them, 3 friends, and either Jesse or BF so he could have proof because he thought what was happening was disrespectful and someone should tell me. There were prints of texts between 2 friends and Jesse and 1 other friend and BF. They were pretty clear. Jesse especially didn't seem to care about hiding it at all. BF texts were mostly wondering if I had noticed something and wanting Jesse to back off while saying she was hot, etc. There was nothing 100% confirmation on his side. It wasn't a talk between him and one of his closest friends, so it was kind of generic. But when I confronted him, I said I had prints without saying what they showed, and he just confessed. I really appreciate the prints, it was ultimate evidence, but I don't think they did it for me. It's a Pete thing, you'd have to know him to understand. He's the stand-up guy who is everyone's friend. He is a huge people person. I think they sent the prints because it was something for him, you know? He was the one leading the charge and dealing with consequences. If it were just me, I don't think they would have done it. Update 3. I said I'd come back if anything relevant happened. XBF kept trying to get in touch through common friends. They kept asking me to unblock him and at least hear him out. 'Cause he was really sorry, he loved me, he was a mess, he didn't mean to. Someone even went as far as to ask me if I was really sure it happened. They offered to send me prints of texts where he was talking about me so I'd see how he always had great things to say and how much he cared. But I've had it with the print screen drama for life and said no to the ones who insisted. I told them I wasn't unblocking him, had nothing to say or hear, and if they kept pushing me, I blocked them too. I ran into XBF at this book thing I go to often, hobby of mine. Maybe I'm being presumptuous, but I think he went there for me. He didn't really have any business there. But I'm just speculating, really. He asked if I had a few minutes for coffee. I said I was late, lie. He walked me to my car. He looked so good. Smelled great, he was so sweet. Was even wearing his hair the way I like it. I felt horrible 'cause even after everything, I still like him. He apologized some more. Said he knew I needed time and space, but asked if I'd consider giving him another chance. 'Cause he would wait for me. Said he would never talk to Jesse again and would act like they had restraining orders against each other. And I just found it really funny how everything he was saying required me trusting him, which I don't. So I told him I wasn't interested anymore, and he should move on. I wish I said something snappier or wittier, but I had nothing. This was Saturday. I haven't heard from him or friends since. I think that was that. Jesse also kept trying to talk to me. Like I told some of you in comments, I had a trip coming up. It would have been me, Jesse, XBF, and a few friends. Since Jesse couldn't afford it, my parents paid for most of her expenses. She must have remembered this right after everything went down and panicked, 'cause I had everything. Vouchers, confirmations, emails, credit card info. She went crazy, even showed up at my place. I wasn't home, and my roommate told her to EF off. Exact words. I didn't block her at first, 'cause I admit I was having some fun watching her despair. I talked to my mom, and she was amazing, told me I should cancel everything, even if it costed us money, it was fine. So I did, and for one last bit of print screen drama, I printed all the emails I got confirming cancellations and sent those to Jesse with the word, bye, before blocking her. My roommate has been amazing. We were never really close, and now I don't even know why. She canceled plans with her friends to stay with me and invited me to go out with them next weekend. A few of you suggested I see a therapist, And I did yesterday. I really liked it. It was just one appointment and I mostly just talked, but it felt good. She gave me homework. She talked a little about unhealthy and abusive relationships and asked me to think about my friendship with Jesse and try to point what was healthy and what was unhealthy about it. Made me realize she was never really my friend. She was taking advantage of me for years, and she even had me thanking her for it. Therapist also told me about this saying, I think that's what it is called, the narcissist's prayer, which goes something like that. That didn't happen. If it did, it wasn't my fault. If it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, then you deserved it. Which is totally how Jesse is handling this whole thing now. So good riddance indeed. And a final piece of gossip. Pete talked to me yesterday. He is checking up sometimes. He's a good guy. Again, he is gay. In case someone is still thinking this might turn into a romantic comedy. He said Jesse was super sure that since I broke things off, she and Dean would hook up right away. But apparently he doesn't have the same plans and that freaked her out over the weekend. Pete says he really is a mess and went out drinking hard 4 nights in a row, to the point he had to be carried home by his pals. And yesterday they all went out for lunch at this burger place. Jesse was going to run her fingers through his hair or something, and he just pushed her away and told her to stop and to never touch him again. Great that now he manages to do that, huh? I guess in the end, he really did like me in his sick way. The thing is, I don't want to be with someone who likes me in a sick way. I want to be with someone who likes me in a healthy way. I think I deserve that. I am also thinking about taking the money I got back from the trip to go somewhere else by myself. Haven't decided, though. Anyway, this will be the final update on this, since it is unlikely that I will have anything new to add now. I think I just need time to heal and let go, you know? I might come back in a few months if there is reason to do a yay. Life is awesome now. Post, but I wanted to post this update now, because I wanted to end this whole story on a bright note. And of course, thank you all again. You are the best. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Sis and Mom stole my car, left a note on the fridge, and ignored my calls while I worked 3 jobs to support them after my dad passed away. So I took everything I bought and moved out. I am the oldest sibling in my family, and I have a younger sister named Kiki. Being the older one, I am the one who has financially supported my family for years after my dad's passing. For context, 4 years ago, Dad passed away in a hit-and-run accident. When the ambulance finally arrived, it was already too late for him, and he was declared dead at the scene. To make things worse, the person responsible for killing him was never caught, leaving us all with both a profound sense of grief and a frustration that justice was never served. Since Dad was the only earning member of the family at the time, after his loss, we struggled to keep things afloat. At the time of Dad's death, I was just on the cusp of graduating from college, so I quickly started looking for jobs. Thankfully, I was able to secure a stable job right after graduation. My mom, having never worked outside the home before, struggled immensely to find a job, especially while grieving. So, I assured her that I would take care of things. Although I was dealing with my own grief, I knew I had to quickly shift my focus to supporting my family. This is how all the responsibilities of the house fell on my shoulders from a very young age. At first, my salary was more than enough to support myself, my mom, and my sister. But as their expenses grew over time, I began to realize that covering household costs, supporting Kiki, and helping my mom would take more than just a regular 9 to 5 job. So, I've even worked overtime at my workplace, as well as taken up additional part-time jobs just to earn a bit more to ease our family's financial strain. There is not a single day that I have rested properly or taken a leave from work, as I cannot afford to do that. As a result, there have been days when I felt utterly exhausted, but the thought of my family depending on me keeps me going. It's been challenging, and at times I wonder how long I can keep up this pace. But knowing that I'm providing for my family in the absence of my father became both a motivation and a duty over time. However, my youngest sister is my complete opposite and does nothing to contribute around the house. Kiki is a spiritual teacher, a career that, while meaningful in its own way, doesn't bring any substantial income or financial relief for our family. I want to make it clear that I respect her passion and her commitment to what she does. But the reality is that her work isn't enough to contribute to our financial needs. She doesn't have many clients, and the ones she does have pay her very little. I have tried to talk to her about it to change her career path, but she claims that being a spiritual teacher is her calling. Meanwhile, she continues to demand money from me for anything that she needs. This difference in perspectives and responsibilities has led to frequent arguments between us. I didn't mind helping out my sister when she was young, but now that she is older and an adult, I needed her to step up and at least use whatever money I was giving her for a better purpose. For example, Kiki insists on buying only high-end organic foods, choosing to shop exclusively at an expensive organic store where prices are nearly double what they would be at a regular grocery store. And while I believe in healthy living, I don't think it's reasonable for her to make these choices at my expense, especially when she could choose more affordable options that wouldn't hurt my wallet as much. In addition to this, Kiki is also adamant about going for regular beauty treatments, getting manicures almost every other week, for instance. She'll even demand that I send her $300 for these services or more sometimes, including hair treatments as well. Whenever I try to put my foot down and say I can't keep funding her lifestyle, Kiki argues that as her older sister, I should help her out as much as I can instead of trying to troll her. If I continue to not give her any money, she would then take her anger out on Mom. She will yell and complain to Mom about me, and sometimes even steal whatever money I give Mom from her purse. This then puts Mom in a difficult position, often leaving her without enough funds to buy whatever she requires. Mom then has to come to me to ask for more money. Ultimately, everyone's burden falls on my shoulders. Our mom, who sees the situation from both sides, has tried to talk to Kiki on numerous occasions. She has gently suggested Kiki find a steady job or at least make some effort to contribute financially, even part-time, as she wants to continue her spiritual practice. But despite these conversations, Kiki hasn't shown any willingness to change or adjust her approach. Her insistence on living a lifestyle that doesn't align with our family's reality has only made the strain in our family more pronounced, leaving me carrying this burden largely on my own. Now, coming to the recent incident and why I am on Reddit today. Kiki had been dating this guy who, from what I could tell, was never the most reliable or trustworthy person. He basically liked stringing my sister along but never really publicly accepted her as his girlfriend. He also regularly hung out with a lot of other females behind Kiki's back. Eventually, my sister caught him red-handed with one of his so-called friends. When she confronted him, he argued that he had done nothing wrong and refused to apologize. As a result, their argument became intense, and before long, things got physical. Kiki, feeling deeply hurt and betrayed, ended up punching him in the face and even threw several of his items around the room. She threatened to harm him further and any other girl he was involved with. Things spiraled out of control to the point that the neighbors heard the commotion and called the police. When the officers arrived, they saw that Kiki had been the one who'd lashed out physically, and because of the damage she'd caused and her physical assault on him, she was arrested. Luckily, the guy agreed to not press any charges, and since this was her first offense, the officers agreed to let her go with a warning. I thought that going through something so dramatic might at least lead her to reflect on her actions and maybe change for the better. However, rather than expressing any remorse or acknowledging the trouble she'd put everyone through, Kiki remained entirely unapologetic. In fact, she was adamant that she'd done the right thing, openly declared that she had no regrets about how she'd handled the situation, seeing her actions as justified under the circumstances. Ever since her breakup, Kiki has done little but sulk around the house, using the breakup as an excuse to avoid any sort of responsibility. Rather than stepping up or trying to move forward, she has slipped deeper into a reckless lifestyle. Most days she goes out with her friends to various pubs, coming back late at night completely drunk, and more often than not, she brings strangers home with her. I've tried speaking with her, hoping that a conversation might help her see the harm she's doing to herself and the chaos she's bringing into our lives. But she simply doesn't listen, brushing off my concerns as if I'm the one overreacting. This week, my mom pulled me aside to talk about Kiki. My sister was out at the time, so Mom and I could talk freely about her. Mom started to tell me how she was starting to get genuinely concerned about Kiki, sharing that she'd recently discovered Kiki has been using drugs. This was a surprise, since I thought my sister only ever got drunk or smoked weed. Knowing that she had now started to use drugs was scary. It also made sense why my sister had been asking me for more and more money every week. Mom continued to express that Kiki's self-destructive behavior might spiral even further out of control and felt that we needed to step up and intervene before things got any worse for her. I agreed and suggested that maybe it was time to get Kiki some professional help. Perhaps we could look into rehab, a counselor, or even therapy, someone who might be able to reach her in ways we clearly haven't been able to. After all, no amount of talking seems to be making any difference, and every attempt we've made to reach her so far has ended up in arguments or dismissive responses. However, my mom argued that she didn't want her daughter's care to be left up to the hands of a stranger. She felt strongly that, as her family, it was our responsibility to support Kiki in whatever way we could. She then surprised me by mentioning that after she found out about my sister's drug use, she had been researching on her own and had found just the perfect luxury wellness retreat where she thought she could take Kiki for a week. This retreat allowed each participant to bring a companion, and Mom felt it would give her an opportunity to spend quality time with Kiki in a therapeutic setting. I was taken aback by the idea, not just because it seemed unnecessary, but also because I couldn't fathom how we could afford it. With my income, after covering all our bills and family expenses, there's rarely any extra left over, and going to a luxury retreat was out of the question. We couldn't even splurge on a meal at a modest restaurant, so the thought of paying for a week at a high-end wellness retreat seemed wildly unrealistic. When I questioned how we could possibly fund this, Mom gently reminded me that she knew I'd been saving up to buy a used car for months. She then suggested that perhaps I could use that money instead to send her and Kiki to the retreat. I felt a mix of shock and frustration. I've been diligently setting aside money for this car because it was essential for my daily routine. My commute currently stretches to nearly 3 hours each way, and having a car would drastically reduce that. Buying a car was something I needed to help manage my time better and reduce the exhaustion that comes with my long commute. Besides, this wasn't just about me. Having a car would benefit all of us, allowing us to cut down on the costs and inconveniences of public transport, Uber, and other options we rely on. I explained this to my mom, pointing out that this car was an investment in our future stability and would ultimately help our family as well. So I told her that I wasn't going to give up my hard-earned savings for my sister. But Mom was adamant, saying that Kiki needed this experience more than I needed the car, and that we couldn't stand by and do nothing for her. She expressed her deep fear of losing another loved one, especially after Dad's passing, and was convinced that a retreat could be transformative for Kiki. I pointed out to my mom that a more reasonable alternative would be to find a counselor or therapist locally, one who could work with Kiki regularly to address her emotional and mental health. That way, we wouldn't have to spend such a significant amount on a retreat where Kiki might end up simply relaxing rather than tackling the issues she needs to address. I assured Mom that I would research options and find a reputable counselor for Kiki by the end of the week. I suggested to Mom that all she needed to do was have a heart-to-heart conversation with Kiki and just encourage my sister to give counseling a try, as Kiki often disregards my suggestions. My mom didn't argue much with me after that, so I thought she had finally come around to see my point of view. So, you can imagine my utter shock and anger when I came home last night, exhausted from work, only to find the house eerily empty. Usually when I walk in, Mom is either watching TV or reading one of her books. I called out for both Kiki and Mom, hoping they'd pop up from somewhere, but the house was empty. No response. No sign of anyone. I thought maybe they were out buying groceries or something. I walked into the kitchen and noticed a note taped to the refrigerator, written in my mom's familiar handwriting. I pulled it off the fridge and read the message from her. Sorry we couldn't wait for you. Kiki and I are on our way to the luxury retreat. I know you'll be upset, but honestly, money can always be earned back. But your sister's mental health comes first. We'll see you in a week. I stood there staring at the note, unable to fully process what I was reading. Overwhelmed with anxiety and disbelief, I ran to my computer and logged into my bank account. Mom had access to my bank account, and as I looked at my balance, a feeling of shock washed over me. Mom had withdrawn all the savings I had. Every dollar I had carefully put aside for months was completely drained. The fact that my own mother could do something so vile to me left me feeling both betrayed and helpless. Couldn't hold back the tears. I just sat there staring at the screen, sobbing in disbelief and frustration. How could she take the money I had worked so hard to save? Money that was supposed to help me make my life easier, and use it to fund a luxury retreat with my ungrateful sister. All I could see was that simple note on the fridge saying, "Money can always be earned back." How could she say that, though, when I was the only one actually earning anything around the house? Mom didn't work. Kiki didn't contribute. I was the one sacrificing my time, my energy, and my future, all to keep us afloat. And now, after everything, they'd taken my hard-earned money for a getaway I never agreed to, leaving me to bear the full weight of responsibility. Since then, I've left Mom several angry voicemails, trying to make her understand just how deeply she hurt me, but she hasn't answered a single call, choosing instead to ignore my attempts to reach her. She knows I'm upset and yet has decided to avoid confronting the situation. As for Kiki, the only response I've gotten from her was a single infuriating text. A wink emoji. A wink. No apology, no explanation, just a smug little emoji, as if to say she couldn't care less about the pain I feel. This whole situation has left me feeling betrayed, unsupported, and utterly alone in a family I've done nothing but sacrifice for. I am so angry, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for being pissed at my mom and sister for doing this to me? Am I overreacting? Date 1. Thank you to everyone for your comments. It has really made me think. I completely agree. My mom and sister have been taking advantage of my willingness to step up. Please let me explain. When Dad passed away, I was devastated. In that grief, I felt this immense responsibility to take care of our family. I was the only one who had a job, and somehow I convinced myself that it was my duty to make sure we were okay financially, even if it meant taking on more than my fair share. It was almost as if I believed that providing for them would somehow fill the void that Dad's absence left. At the time, I was so focused on keeping us all afloat that I didn't notice how little effort they were putting in to support me or themselves. But now, after everything that's happened, it's become painfully clear that things have gone way too far. Losing my savings like this has been a real wake-up call, and it's made me realize that I've been taken for granted. Mom and Kiki seem to assume I'll always be there to pick up the pieces, but what about my own life? I'm working myself to the bone while they continue to live without contributing financially or even showing gratitude for my sacrifices. To everyone telling me to report my mom to the police, I don't want to do that. As much as I am angry and disappointed in her, I don't want her to end up in jail. Instead, I've decided to give her an even harsher consequence by moving out of the house. I could have done this years ago, but I stayed with Mom and Kiki all these years because I felt they needed me. If I weren't shouldering the burden of their expenses, I could actually have a stable, financially secure life. I could use my money to live comfortably, maybe even invest in things I enjoy or build a future for myself. It's hard to admit, but I'm starting to realize that my loyalty to my family has cost me my own happiness. I have a lot to think about for tonight. Update 2. It's been a week since my last update. Thanks to all of your strong suggestions and support, the first thing I did was begin packing up my things from around the house. I made a point of gathering everything I had bought over the years. Kitchen appliances, dishes, home decor, and the countless other items that I had purchased to make our home functional and comfortable. I then reached out to a close friend who graciously offered to let me stay with her temporarily while I searched for an apartment of my own. I made sure to leave long before Mom and Kiki returned, leaving not a single note or explanation behind. I knew any conversation about my departure would fall on deaf ears, and I wanted them to truly feel the weight of my absence without any warning. Sure enough, the moment they arrived back and found the house stripped of everything I'd ever contributed, they began calling me repeatedly. My phone was soon flooded with voicemails from Mom, asking where I was and what had happened to all the things in the house. The irony was almost laughable. Only now, when they were faced with an empty house and no one to rely on, did they start reaching out in desperation. Now they were the ones left without answers after letting them stew for a few hours. I called Mom back. When she picked up, she told me that she had me on speakerphone and Kiki was next to her. Both of them wanted to know why I had disappeared. Mom told me she knew I was upset about her taking my money and tried to justify it by saying that Kiki was feeling much better after her mini vacation. She insisted that I shouldn't still be upset about it. I just kept my composure and informed Mom that I had moved out for good and now they were on their own. Immediately, Mom and Kiki demanded to know why I had done something like this. Mom started to say that I should have talked with her before leaving the house like that. I reminded her that she and Kiki had gone behind my back, taken every cent of my savings without so much as a heads up, and spent it on themselves without even waiting for the chance to talk it over with me. They had ignored my calls all week, avoiding any attempt at accountability until now, when they'd returned to find themselves without my financial support. I told them that I was done supporting them. They had made their choices, and now they could handle the consequences. If they truly wanted to be on their own, they were welcome to it. I wasn't coming back. That was when Mom began pleading, saying that I couldn't just leave them like this and that she was now willing to sit down and talk things over with me. But Kiki, still in the background, was shouting louder than ever, demanding to know why I was punishing them by starving them and leaving them behind when all they had done was just take a well-deserved break. She even accused me of being selfish. Mom argued that half the kitchen appliances were gone and that there was barely any food left in the house. She tried to guilt me, saying while she understood my frustration, she was frustrated with my overreaction. She said that I was throwing a tantrum for no reason and urged me to calm down and come back home. But for the first time, I felt no pull of guilt, no desire to smooth things over or run back to fix everything. Instead, I knew I was done, and that realization felt freeing. This was no tantrum. It was me finally standing up for myself, setting boundaries that had been overlooked for far too long. When Mom suggested that if I returned, she would never make the same mistake again, I simply laughed at her. I told her flat out that I couldn't care less if she ever did something like this again. I had already taken steps to protect myself. I had removed her access to my bank account. I also wasn't going to send them any more money or bail them out. They were on their own now. I told her they still had the house Dad paid for, and if they really wanted to stay afloat, they needed to find jobs immediately and start taking responsibility. Kiki, of course, screamed and demanded to know what they were supposed to do in the meantime, how they were going to survive without food and no money. Mom, angry and desperate, started yelling at me too, calling me selfish and stubborn-headed. But I wasn't fazed. I'd heard all the guilt trips before. I simply ignored their screaming and ended the call, blocking both of them from contacting me again. I can't lie, it felt incredibly satisfying. After all those years of putting myself second and giving everything for them, I was finally standing up for myself. I know this will be a tough lesson for them, but they need to understand the consequences of exploiting me and taking advantage of my hard work. Since that conversation, there's been no contact from my family, mainly because I have blocked them from my contacts and social media. Also, for the first time in a long time, I'm living my life on my own terms, and it feels like a weight has been lifted. Update 3. For everyone who's worried about my mom or sister showing up at my job, don't worry. I've already informed my boss about the situation, and a few of my colleagues are aware of how crazy and irrational both my mom and sister are. It's safe to say that everyone has been very sympathetic and supportive about what I've been through. If Kiki does show up at my workplace to harass me, well, it would only give me a reason to file a police complaint against her. That definitely wouldn't be good for her record, so I sincerely hope for her sake that she doesn't cross that line. As for how my mom and Kiki are going to survive with no food or money, honestly, I don't know. And at this point, I really don't care. Perhaps there's still a bit of the money they took from me left after all their spending on the retreat, or maybe they'll find a way to make do. They're adults and they have a house, so it's not like they're completely without resources. Maybe they'll manage to find jobs soon or even reach out to other family members for help. At this point, I'm done being the one to pick up the pieces for them. I've spent years looking after them, sacrificing my own well-being. This is their turn to figure things out on their own. I've made my choice, and I'm moving forward with my life. Update 4. Wow, it's been 6 months since my last update. I continue to receive DMs from people asking how I'm doing. So I'm finally here on Reddit to give an update. My life has been going great lately. I finally moved into my own place after saving money for months while living with my friend. It's not a big space, but it's mine, and that's all that matters right now. Now that I have a space of my own, I have started to save for a car, just like I had always dreamed about. As for any updates regarding my mom and Kiki, they did try to reach out to me a few months ago. They showed up at my office one late evening. I'll admit, seeing them there shook me a little. My mom looked absolutely exhausted. Her eyes were sunken, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. It was clear she had been going through a lot. She ran straight into my arms and started crying, pleading with me to come back home with them. I wanted to feel sympathy for her, but I stayed firm. I told her no, and I couldn't go back to that environment. Hearing this, my mom continued to cry like she couldn't even fathom what I was saying. Kiki, of course, immediately started blaming me for abandoning them and told me how difficult their life has been, as if all of this was somehow my fault. She insisted that I needed to stop playing around and come back home since they had already learned their lesson. Kiki even claimed she was now ready to find a job and earn proper money, just like I had wanted her to do. Mom then tried to pull the emotional card, saying Dad would be disappointed in me for abandoning them and that he would have wanted us to stick together. I replied calmly but firmly that I believe Dad would actually be proud of me for cutting my losses and walking away. I wasn't going to let them drag me down anymore. I told them how much better my life had become without them, without constantly being asked for money or to rescue them from their own choices. I continued to tell them it was wrong for them to just show up outside my office like this without any respect for my boundaries. I had explicitly cut them off, so this was not okay. They couldn't force me to go back home with them when I didn't want to. I warned them that if they did something like this again, I would call the cops. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me back into a situation where I was being taken for granted. In the end, she and Mom left begrudgingly, but even while going, Kiki begged me to give her a few hundred for the last time, but I refused. That was the last time I saw them in person. After that encounter, there's been no further contact from them. Since then, I've heard through a few friends from my old neighborhood that Kiki still hasn't found a proper job, while Mom is the one working at a local diner and bringing in all the money. It breaks my heart, honestly, that my sister is so cruel to make our poor mother work for her. Also, Kiki has made her current boyfriend move in with them. Apparently, this guy does have a job and isn't exactly like a freeloader, so I guess he's helping out with things. If he's providing support, at least they have some stability now. Anyway, this will be my final update about my family. I've put in a lot of effort to heal and move forward after leaving home, so I'm going to choose to not discuss them any further. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Brat's sister had an affair with my husband of 2 months, got pregnant, and then had the nerve to pack my bags and kick me out so she could live with him. My parents supported them. Just 3 months ago, I, F28, was married to the love of my life, Wes, M32, after being with him for 4 years. Today, I'm in the process of divorcing him, and my life and family have completely fallen apart. I have no support from my own family, and the only people I can rely on are my friends. Thank God for them, or I'd be a bigger mess than I am now. I don't know why this happened or what lesson I'm supposed to learn from it all. All I know is this is unfair, and I don't know what I did to deserve being stuck in such a horrible situation. I have an older sister, Meg, F34. Meg and I have always had an okay relationship. There's a big age gap between us, so we never really had the chance to form that sisterly bond. I wasn't even a teenager when she left for college out of state. I wouldn't say we hated each other, well, now we do, but as kids, I don't think we hated each other. At least I didn't hate her. But we also weren't the typical close best friend-sister duo. There's no Elsa and Anna going on here. Our parents, too, never forced us to develop a bond. We did things as a family, but both she and I were allowed to be our own people, which was a good thing. Years later, when I went to college, things improved a little between us. I think since we were both adults, we could relate to each other better. I didn't go to the same university as her, and we weren't in the same state, but we still talked more than before, which is why this, coming from her, was the biggest shock of my life. When I was 24, I met Wes. He was an alumnus of my college and had come for a party. That's where we met, hit it off, and started dating soon after. By year 2 of our relationship, I had introduced him to my family. He popped the question a year ago, and we got married 3 months ago. I had the perfect life, I'm not going to lie. I had a fiancé who loved me, a good job in a field I chose for myself, and Wes was doing well too. Everything was going great until 3 months ago. Meg, on the other hand, had a more difficult personal life. She got married when she was 25 to a man none of us liked. It was obvious he wasn't good for her, but no matter what we said, she wouldn't budge from her decision. So we let her be because that's all we could do. It wasn't a happy marriage by any means. He forced, or rather manipulated, her into leaving her job, which she did, making her financially dependent on him. My parents and I asked her many times if she was okay with it and told her we'd support her if she wanted to leave, but she always said no and asked us not to meddle. The breaking point for us, or rather me, came when she claimed I was hellbent on destroying her marriage because I had no one of my own. This was 5 years ago, before I met Wes. I knew then there was no point in arguing with her or trying to make her see sense. She was behaving like a woman who was blind and loved by choice, and any help offered was seen as an affront. That was the last time I spoke to her about her a-hole of a husband, and we had very limited contact for close to 2 years after that. When I was 25 and she was 31, she finally got divorced. I never asked her the reason because I didn't want to meddle, not even a little. She tried to talk to me about it, but I always shut her down. Call me cruel or whatever, but I didn't have the energy or willingness to participate in it again. For years I'd tried looking out for her, but in the end, I was blamed and shamed for it, and there was just no way I was engaging again. Pissed her off a lot because I assumed she wanted support at that time, but I was out. This isn't to say I was downright cruel or mean to her. We patched up, sort of, and spent time together talking, hanging out. She'd moved to my state, and she even ranted about her issues to me, but I never gave any input. She was welcome to grieve and complain, but I wasn't going to open my mouth when it came to her ex-husband. She knew this, and it pissed her off so much so that she sometimes tried to rile me up and get a reaction, but I knew better than to fall for it. Wes, for his part, could never understand the dynamic between me and my sister. He used to defend her and say that her judgment was clouded because of her husband and that I shouldn't hold that against her. According to him, it's natural for people to behave this way when they're in love or when they've made a decision for themselves and it turns out to be wrong. No one likes to admit they screwed up, especially when others told them not to do something. I agree with him on this. No one likes being told, "I told you so." But downright accusing someone of being a homewrecker is vile and disgusting, and I wasn't going to put up with it. And it's hilarious how she accused me of being a homewrecker when she's the one who had an affair with my husband. Anyway, so Wes and Meg had an okay relationship in the sense that it was as okay as I allowed. I didn't engage with her much, so Wes's contact with her was limited as well. We met when we had time, and he always had a more sympathetic take towards her than I did. All through my relationship with him, I never suspected they were involved. Their interaction was limited, and I never imagined I would have to worry about something like this because Wes wasn't the kind of man to cheat. We got married 3 months ago, and everything was great. We had a great ceremony, our families were happy, and everyone attended. It was wonderful, but we postponed the honeymoon because we wanted to go on the Disneyland cruise. We knew we wouldn't get leave for 2 big vacations, so right after the wedding, we focused on decorating the house. I had moved in with him, the house is in his name, and things were good for the first couple of weeks. Well, I only got a couple of weeks with him because about a month ago, my dear sister called me up crying, saying she needed to talk. I didn't have the energy for another one of her sob sessions, and I said the same to Wes, and for a change, he agreed with me. Little did I know what was coming. I told her I was busy, but she kept insisting it was urgent and we needed to meet. I invited her over and Wes was there too. She looked uncomfortable and Wes, in hindsight, seemed like he wanted to be anywhere but in that room. She told me she was pregnant and then started crying. Before I could ask anything, she said Wes was the father. It took me a minute to process what she was saying. I looked at her and Wes, who to his credit looked as shocked as I was, and I started laughing. I thought it was some elaborate prank, but Wes wasn't laughing and Meg was still crying. I turned to Wes, asking what was going on, and he muttered, "You can't be pregnant." I asked what the hell he meant by that, and before he could answer, Meg interrupted and said they hooked up a month ago and she was sure Wes was the father. I swear I couldn't think straight for a minute. I just stared at her like a deer in headlights, And when she didn't say anything else, I looked at Wes. He broke down crying, saying it was a one-time thing, it meant nothing, and that he never thought she'd get pregnant, as if that was the issue. I told her to leave, and I told Wes to get out too. I couldn't look at them anymore and needed time to process what had happened. Meg looked at me like I was the one who had committed some unforgivable crime. She had the audacity to say that she should be the one staying in the house since she was pregnant and I was not. It took every ounce of self-control not to slap her right there. I looked at Wes in disbelief, and he told her to leave, which she did. Wes left too, though I don't think they left together, but at this point, who knows? If he could get her pregnant, he sure could leave with her. I think I sat there for hours, unable to think. My mind was just numb. I don't know where the time went, and I had a few calls from Wes during that time, but I had turned off my phone because he was the last person I wanted to talk to. I couldn't believe he had betrayed me like this. This wasn't something I thought he was capable of. I couldn't even process the betrayal from Meg because I was still in shock over what my own husband had done. And then I saw a text from her. It essentially said that while she was sorry for what happened, it couldn't be changed. She was pregnant. She knew she was going to keep the baby, and it was in the best interest of the entire family for me to move out so she could move in with Wes, allowing him to take care of her and bond with the baby when it was born. I was appalled at her audacity. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to say this to me after sleeping with my husband. But I also knew I couldn't stay with Wes anymore. Despite my numbness, I knew that from the moment he confirmed it was his child, I couldn't stay with a cheater, and I couldn't stay in such a screwed-up family dynamic. I knew I had to leave. Whether or not she moved in was between Wes and her, but I knew I had to leave. I decided to call my mom and dad to tell them what had happened, but before I got the chance, my mom called me first. She told me Meg had spoken to her, and while it wasn't an ideal situation, I had to understand that this was Meg's last chance to be a mother. I asked Mom if she was serious and if she understood the gravity of what Meg had done. Mom was quiet for a moment and said I was always welcome to come back home to her and Dad. But Meg was 34, and she deserved to have a family after what happened with her ex-husband. I told Mom there were hundreds of other men Meg could have had a family with, and she couldn't be defending her sleeping with my husband. Mom said she understood I was hurt, but I had to look at the bigger picture. She said maybe it was God's will because Meg got pregnant so easily, and if it was, I had to make way for his plan rather than focus on my own life. I cried for the first time after hearing this from Mom. I couldn't believe she was supporting Meg over me when I was clearly the one who had been wronged. I disconnected the call. I knew there was nothing left for me. In the snap of a finger, my entire family had been taken from me. My husband, my sister, and my parents. I was all alone, and there was nothing I could do to change that. That's when I knew for sure I was moving out and going no contact with all of them. They could all eat crap. This was just too much for me to handle. Still too much. It's only been about 2 months since I found out, and I hadn't thought they'd drag me into more drama. But here we are. I can't escape them, unfortunately. Anyway, that night I texted Wes that I still didn't want to see him for a couple of days. He called me back immediately, but I didn't answer. He sent a barrage of texts apologizing and saying he didn't know what had come over him, but I wasn't in the mood to engage. I called my friend Sarah and briefly told her what was up and that I needed a place to stay until I could figure something out. She told me I could stay as long as I needed. She came over with some wine and pasta, and we ate while I cried and cried like I hadn't cried in years. She stayed with me for 2 whole days, thank God for good friends, and helped me pack my stuff. It was so much easier to deal with things having her around. There were moments when I went completely numb and couldn't get up, and she took charge and got things sorted. Once my stuff was packed and loaded in the car, I called Wes and told him he could come home now. It took him 20 minutes to arrive, and when he did, he couldn't look me in the eye. He said he was sorry and that he was glad I was giving him a chance to talk, and even though he had no justification, he still hoped I'd forgive him. I didn't say anything, just handed him the house keys and got in the car. By the time he realized what had happened, I was already gone with Sarah. I haven't had any contact with him since. He has sent texts, but I haven't responded. I filed for divorce immediately, and while he initially tried to fight it, he eventually stopped. I stayed with Sarah for about 3 weeks before finding a place of my own. It's a small studio, but it's more than enough for me. Wes is the only one who's still unblocked on my phone, and that's on my lawyer's advice. I've gone no contact with my parents and sister, and I prefer to keep it that way because I don't have the energy for their toxicity anymore. I thought they would get the hint and stay out of my life, but I guess that's not how it's supposed to be because now I see Meg on my doorstep. I don't know how she got my address or what she wanted, but there she was, saying she needed to talk. I closed the door in her face because I didn't want to see her, let alone talk to her, but she didn't leave. She kept banging on my door, and I told her to go away or I'd call the cops. But she didn't leave. She did stop knocking, but she didn't leave. I found it out the hard way. After about 20 minutes of silence, I assumed she was gone and decided to go out. I got into my car, but what I couldn't see was that she had followed me in her car. I stopped on the way to grab coffee, and she stopped me there. She said I had to talk to her, that I owed it to her. I yanked my arm away and told her I didn't owe her anything and she could get lost for all I cared. She said she understood I hated her at the moment, but as the auntie to her baby, I had a duty and had already failed to discharge it. I had no idea what she was talking about, and I told her in no uncertain terms that I wasn't her kid's aunt. I'm no aunt to a child from my ex-husband, and I needed to be kept out of this mess. She said if I had warned her about Wes, she wouldn't be in this position and I wouldn't have had to end my marriage. I didn't know what she was talking about, and I admit at that point I should have walked away, but curiosity got the better of me. I asked her what was wrong, and she broke down crying. She said she had no idea Wes would be such a terrible partner and that I had been living with someone like that for so long. She said he didn't help around the house at all. There was no emotional support from his side, and it felt like living with a zombie. She had hoped that as the pregnancy progressed, he would bond with the baby, if not with her, but she said it was worse than being with her ex-husband. He did nothing around the house, no chores, no spending time with her, nothing. He had even told her she shouldn't expect him to be involved with the baby. He said he was willing to keep her and the kid in the house and would handle the finances, but the house and baby were her responsibility. She said she tried dishing it back by not preparing his meals or doing his laundry, but somehow he managed his own chores and went to work, leaving her feeling helpless. She said if she had known he would be this way, she wouldn't have revealed who the father was and would have raised the kid on her own, but I had led her to believe that he was a wonderful partner, which is why she dropped the bomb, but now her life was worse than before. I told her I had no idea how she had the nerve to blame me after sleeping with my husband, but I wished her luck and she could do whatever she wanted since I was out. She said I couldn't leave her like this, but I wasn't in the mood to listen anymore, so I left the cafe. Now I'm sitting in my car typing this out because I don't know what to do, how to feel, or who to talk to. This is such a big mess, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to make my way out of this. I just hope she doesn't contact me again, and I hope Wes doesn't find out she met me. I'm worried if he does, he'll start texting and calling me again, and I don't have the energy to deal with that anymore. Edit. I went through all the comments, and they've opened my eyes to what really happened. I was too stunned to process Meg's reaction, but now I realize she may have purposely baby-trapped Wes because she thought he was a good partner, especially after her horrible experience with her ex-husband. I'm not excusing Wes. He hurt me beyond repair, but the more I think about it, the more likely it seems her entire tirade earlier was about how she felt cheated because Wes wasn't the partner I propped him up to be. But why should that bother her? Why would she say that if I told her the truth, things would be the same? It's disgusting and appalling how vile she can be. I can't believe I second-guessed myself after what she said. And the confusing part is that Wes has never been the way she described him. He's always been so hands-on, and her description seems like a lie. I've never known him to be a slacker, and this behavior baffles me completely. I don't know why he's doing this, and I don't want to know either. I'm still struggling with the betrayal, and it's been very hard to adjust to this new normal. I don't want more drama at their expense. They can have the mess they've created. I'm out. Update 1. I wasn't out of this. No matter how hard I try, I keep getting pulled back into their chaos. I had no intention of telling Wes about my meeting with Meg, and I had no desire to contact her again. I had left them to their own devices, but Wes showed up at my house. I don't know how they know where I live. I know Sarah hasn't told them, and I haven't had anyone over who would snitch. Maybe they're stalking me from work, or Wes still has access to my location, though I know that's not possible. Anyway, when I opened the door, it looked like I was meeting a ghost. He was a shell of himself. His cheeks were sunken, and he had dark circles as big as craters. If I didn't absolutely hate him, I might have rushed over and hugged him. That was my reflex, if I'm being honest, but I had to control myself. He said he needed to talk to me one last time and wouldn't bother me again. I let him in, and he spoke for about half an hour. He apologized over and over, saying he was disgusted with himself. He told me that Meg came over one day while I was at work looking for me, and when he told her I wasn't there, she broke down crying. She started off by saying she regretted not having a closer relationship with me and would do anything to fix that. Wes said she asked for his help in making this happen. She was crying a lot, and he said he was consoling her, and one thing led to another. I couldn't control my anger when he said that. I told him there was no justification for what he'd done, and he said he knew he had screwed up and had no excuse. He said he just wanted me to know what had happened. He swore that was the only time anything like that had happened, and he had wanted to tell me immediately, but Meg begged him not to. Even when she told us she was pregnant, he said he was against her keeping it and had asked her to abort it, but she was adamant about keeping the baby. Wes said if I gave him one more chance, he would cut off all contact with her and the baby and start fresh with me. He said he had been acting like a terrible partner on purpose to show Meg they would never be a family no matter what she tried to pretend. He told me my parents and Meg were manipulating him into accepting the situation, but he knew it was wrong. I asked if he was going to marry Meg, and he said he was in the process of kicking her out. He had tried backhanded tactics, but they hadn't worked, so now he had to face it head-on and kick her out himself. He still held out hope I'd forgive him, and he said he'd chosen to wait for me. I told him there was almost no chance I'd ever go back to him because I couldn't get over the betrayal. I said nothing could be worse than him sleeping with my own sister. I told him he had the luxury of ignoring what happened and moving on, but I was stuck with his family for life. There was already too much unavoidable involvement on my part, and I didn't want to complicate things further. He begged me to reconsider, but I stayed firm. I told him I was going to proceed with the divorce no matter what, and there was no point dragging it out. He looked heartbroken, and it was just so sad. Despite everything, I still love the guy. That's the worst part. I love him so much, but I can never overlook what he's done. That's the tragedy of it all. Update 2. For those waiting for a dramatic update, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I've gone completely low contact with Wes, and the divorce will be finalized in a couple of weeks. He's kicked Meg out, and she somehow found a way to blame me for it, but honestly, at this point, I don't even care. My parents tried getting in touch with me to argue Meg's case to Wes. I don't know what kind of stuff they're on to even suggest something like that, but I didn't respond. There's no point talking to people so indifferent to other people's pain that they don't even know what to say. Other than that, life is normal. I mean, as normal as it can be in these circumstances. There are still days when I break down uncontrollably, but overall I'm doing better. I have my friends, I have my job, and I keep myself busy, and I don't think I should expect any more from myself so soon. I genuinely feel the worst is over, and I know I'll be going no contact with the baby too. I know it's not the baby's fault, but it's best for me to stay as far away from this mess as possible. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Sil bullied me about my poor background at a party, while living in a huge mansion. Turns out she was scamming her rich friends and even her dad to pay for it. I'm 34F and have been married to my husband, James, 36M, for 8 years now. We've always lived a modest life, choosing to prioritize saving for our future rather than indulging in a luxurious lifestyle. James works as an engineer, and I'm a bakery owner. After a lot of hard work, we've both built stable careers that allow us to live comfortably, though we're not wealthy by any means. Over the years, we've learned to live within our means, focusing on what really matters to us. Building a strong relationship, planning for the future, and living responsibly. However, while James and I have worked to build this life, his family dynamics have always been a bit of a struggle, especially when it comes to his younger sister, Rachel, 32F. Rachel has always been a difficult person to deal with, to put it mildly. She's the youngest and the only daughter in the family, and she has always acted as if the world revolves around her. I don't like to speak ill of others, but in this case, I have to say it, Rachel is spoiled. Rachel married her husband, Thomas, 38M, 3 years ago. Thomas comes from old money, and he works as an investment banker in New York City. They had been living in a luxury apartment in the city, but recently they decided they wanted to buy a house. Of course, Rachel wanted nothing less than her dream home in an upscale neighborhood. But despite Thomas's family wealth, his parents have strict rules about earning your own way and refuse to help with a house purchase. So Rachel and Thomas turned to my father-in-law, Phil, for financial help instead. And Phil, who has always been soft when it comes to Rachel, agreed to cover the down payment for them. That's how they managed to buy the house. But this whole situation sparked a series of events that ultimately blew up in a way none of us expected. Since the very beginning, Rachel has made it clear she doesn't like me, though I've never been able to understand why. Her dislike started with small, subtle digs about my background. I grew up in a hardworking immigrant family. My parents ran a small grocery store, and though we didn't have much, they made sure I had a good education and strong values. When my parents tragically passed away in a car accident 5 years ago, it was devastating. Yet, even during this time, Rachel found ways to be cruel. She began to make more cutting comments about my humble upbringing, implying that I didn't belong in the same social circle as her or her husband. Rachel would say things like, "I guess people like you don't understand what it's like to have nice things." Or, "I can see why James doesn't take you on expensive vacations. It's probably best not to spoil you." Every time she spoke, it felt like a jab at me and my parents, as if she were deliberately trying to undermine my self-worth. The worst part was that she seemed to take pleasure in it, as though her wealth and social status somehow gave her the right to belittle me. For a while, I tried to let her remarks roll off my back. I told myself that Rachel was insecure and was just acting out of jealousy or some other issue she had with herself. Not me. But over time, her constant jabs started to wear on me. It wasn't just the things she said. It was the way she would bring up money and luxury, as though those were the only things that mattered in life. For example, when she and Thomas first moved into their luxury apartment, she couldn't stop talking about the expensive designer furniture, the high-end artwork they'd purchased, or the fancy trips they took to Europe. It was clear that she thought material wealth was everything, and she wanted me to feel inferior. James has always been supportive of me, but dealing with Rachel has been tough for him too. As her older brother, he feels a certain responsibility toward her, but even he has grown tired of her entitled behavior. He's had more than a few talks with her over the years, telling her that her comments were hurtful and unnecessary, but she just doesn't seem to care. To Rachel, I'm beneath her, and there's no changing her mind. Her attitude caused tension between us, but I didn't want to put James in a difficult position. I tried to handle things quietly, only bringing it up when it became unbearable. Things finally reached a boiling point at Rachel's housewarming party, which she threw shortly after moving into her new home. Of course, James and I were invited. I would have preferred not to go, but James felt we should go to keep the peace in the family. I reluctantly agreed, hoping that maybe now that Rachel had everything she wanted, a rich husband, a beautiful new home, and the financial support of our Phil, she might have calmed down and would finally stop treating me so poorly. When we arrived at the party, it was immediately clear that Rachel was the center of attention, basking in the admiration of her friends and showing off her new house. She led guests around on a tour, pointing out all the fancy features like the custom marble countertops, top-of-the-line appliances, and the luxurious backyard pool. I tried to stay out of her way, making small talk with other guests and keeping to myself as much as possible. But throughout the evening, I could feel her eyes on me. I could tell she was waiting for the right moment to strike, and I should have known she had something nasty planned. Dinner was served buffet style, so I filled my plate and sat down at one of the long tables set up in the backyard. I was quietly eating when Rachel made her move. She walked to the head of the table, looking around with a smug expression, and then dropped her bombshell. "Oh, wait for the leftovers, just like your low-class parents taught you." The entire table went silent. I felt a sharp pain in my chest as her words hit me. I was humiliated and hurt, not just because she had insulted me, but because she had dragged my parents into it. They weren't there to defend themselves, and that made her comment even more painful. I was too shocked to respond. I just sat there, frozen, as Rachel looked around, clearly expecting the rest of the guests to laugh or join in on her mockery. But something unexpected happened. My father-in-law, who had been sitting at the far end of the table, stood up. Now, Raphael has always been a quiet man. He doesn't involve himself in family drama, and he's never really taken sides in conflicts between his children. But this time, he had reached his breaking point. He looked directly at Rachel, his face stern, and told her that her behavior was unacceptable. He said that he had tolerated her bratty attitude for years, but this was too much. He told her that if she didn't start showing respect, not just to me but to everyone, she would find herself cut off, both financially and emotionally. Rachel was stunned. Her face turned red, and she tried to argue, but Raphael wasn't having it. He reminded her that he had helped her buy this house because he believed she was ready to take on the responsibility, but her actions had proven otherwise. Raphael told her that unless she apologized to me and changed her ways, she could forget about any further financial support. With that, he turned and walked away from the table, leaving Rachel standing there speechless. The rest of the guests awkwardly excused themselves from the table, and James and I left soon after. I was still in shock over what had happened. I never expected Raphael to stand up for me like that, especially not against Rachel. But I was incredibly grateful. It was the first time someone in James's family had publicly called Rachel out for her behavior. The days following the party were tense. Rachel was furious, not just with me, but with her father. The day after the party, she stormed over to her parents' house and demanded an apology from Raphael, claiming that he had embarrassed her in front of her friends. What really upset her was the fact that her upper-class friends didn't know she had taken a loan from Raphael to buy her house. Now they all knew, and Rachel couldn't stand that. But Raphael didn't back down. He stood by what he had said at the party and made it clear that Rachel's behavior was out of line. He told her again that unless she apologized and made amends, she could expect no more help from him, financially or otherwise. This wasn't just an empty threat. Raphael had been helping Rachel and Thomas with their mortgage payments every month, and without that assistance, they would be in serious financial trouble. Despite Thomas's family wealth, they weren't willing to bail Rachel out, and without Raphael's help, Rachel and Thomas would be forced to manage on their own. Rachel did not take this well. She blocked her parents on social media, stopped answering their calls, and distanced herself from the family. The tension in the family became palpable, but James and I tried to stay out of it as much as possible. We didn't hear from Rachel directly, but I knew this was far from over. Rachel wasn't the type to let something like this go easily, and I was right. After distancing herself from her parents, Rachel began spamming me with texts, accusing me of ruining her party and demanding that I apologize to her. She said that I should be the one begging for her forgiveness, not the other way around. It was bizarre. Somehow, in her mind, I was the one who had wronged her, even though she had humiliated me by insulting my parents in front of everyone. I was so overwhelmed by the whole situation that I considered apologizing just to make the drama stop. But I also know that I am not in the wrong. So, Redditors, I could really use some advice. Am I wrong here? I don't think so, right? This whole situation has become so overwhelming that I need another perspective. Update 1. Hey Reddit, I wanted to give you all an update. Unfortunately, things have only gotten worse since my last post. You'd think after everything that went down at Rachel's housewarming party, she'd back off or at the very least lay low for a while. But no, if anything, she's doubled down, and now her husband Thomas is in on it too. It started with Rachel continuing to harass me with texts. She's been relentless, accusing me of ruining her party, destroying her relationship with her father, and basically turning the entire family against her. At first, I tried to ignore her, but it's hard when your phone is constantly buzzing with messages filled with insults and guilt trips. I even considered blocking her, but I didn't want to escalate things further or make it look like I was avoiding the situation. Then Thomas started to get involved. He began calling James several times a day, trying to get him to fix this mess. At first, Thomas's calls were calm, asking James to help smooth things over between Rachel and her parents. But when James made it clear that he wasn't going to get involved, Thomas's tone shifted. He started hinting that James could benefit if he helped out, saying things like, if you help us sort this out, we can make sure you're taken care of too. It was obvious what he was implying: money. Thomas was trying to bribe James into siding with him, probably thinking that James could convince Phil to continue the mortgage payments and avoid cutting Rachel off. The whole thing was disgusting. It made me realize just how manipulative Thomas is. He and Rachel really are a perfect match, both thinking that everything in life can be fixed with money or by pushing people around. James, to his credit, wasn't having any of it. He told Thomas that he wasn't interested in whatever benefits he was offering and that this was an issue Rachel had created on her own. Thomas didn't take that well. He started getting more aggressive, calling James repeatedly and leaving angry voicemails when James stopped picking up. It's clear that Thomas is getting desperate, and that desperation is making him act irrationally. James is trying to keep calm about it, but I can see it's stressing him out. We just want to live our lives in peace, but Rachel and Thomas keep dragging us into their mess. If that wasn't enough, Rachel went back to her parents' house, trying to stir up more drama. She's still hoping they'll continue covering her mortgage payments, even though Phil made it clear that he was done helping her unless she apologized and changed her behavior. Apparently, Rachel thought she could bully her parents into giving in. She showed up unannounced, storming into their house and started shouting at them, demanding they make things right by continuing to pay for the house. From what James's mom told him later, Rachel was in full meltdown mode, screaming about how unfair it was and how she deserved their support. She even had the audacity to threaten them with a lawsuit, saying that if they didn't keep up with the payments, she'd take legal action to force them to. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so sad. I mean, who sues their own parents? The funniest part, though, is that Phil has a legal background. He worked as a lawyer before he retired, and Rachel clearly forgot that little detail when she threatened him with a lawsuit. Phil calmly told her that she didn't have a leg to stand on. He pointed out that there was no written agreement that he had to pay for anything, and even if there had been, one of the conditions of his financial help was that Rachel shows some respect and act responsibly. Since she had failed to meet those conditions, she had no case. Phil told her that if she really wanted to pursue this ridiculous lawsuit, she was welcome to try, but it would only backfire on her. Rachel didn't take that well. She screamed that her father was abandoning her and trying to ruin her life. She said that if her parents didn't continue to pay, she and Thomas would lose the house. It was clear that Rachel was terrified of losing the image she'd worked so hard to create, this life of luxury and privilege that she'd been showing off to everyone. But the truth is, without her parents' help, she and Thomas are in serious financial trouble. Thomas's family wealth isn't going to bail them out, and neither of them seems capable of managing their finances on their own. Phil stood firm, though. He told Rachel that she needed to take responsibility for her own actions, and that until she apologized to me and changed her attitude, she wouldn't be getting another cent from him. He was done with her manipulations and tantrums. Rachel, of course, stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Since then, Rachel has been on a warpath. She still blocked her parents on social media, and now she's telling anyone who will listen that her father is ruining her life and that I'm the one who turned him against her. She's painted herself as the victim in this whole situation, conveniently ignoring all the hurtful things she's said and done. At this point, James and I are just trying to stay out of it as much as possible, but it's hard when they keep pulling us back in. Rachel's texts have become even more vicious, and Thomas is still calling James every day, trying to manipulate him into taking their side. It feels like we're in the middle of a storm that just won't end. So yeah, that's where we are now. Rachel is still causing chaos, Thomas is being manipulative, and we're just trying to maintain our sanity. I have no idea how this is going to play out, but I'm hoping that at some point Rachel will realize that she can't always get her way by bullying and manipulating people. Until then, we're just taking things one day at a time. Any advice on how to handle this mess would be appreciated. It's exhausting, and we're not sure what to do next. Update 2. Hi again, everyone. Thank you so much for all the support and advice. After my last update, things have gotten even crazier. and we recently found out some news that has completely changed the situation with Rachel and Thomas. I'll try to explain everything as clearly as I can, but I'm still processing all of this myself. James and I decided it was time to visit his parents. We hadn't been over there since the whole debacle at Rachel's housewarming party, and while we'd been in touch over the phone, we felt like a face-to-face conversation was long overdue. The tension in the family has made it hard for us all to talk like we used to, and we missed them. Plus, we were curious to hear how things were going on their end with Rachel after she tried to bully them into paying her mortgage. When we arrived at my in-laws' house, it was clear that they were relieved to see us. My Emil gave me a long hug, and my FAL looked more tired than I'd ever seen him. They've been dealing with so much stress, and it was heartbreaking to see how worn down they both were. But after some small talk and catching up, they told us something that shook us. Apparently, things between Rachel and Thomas have taken a serious nosedive. We knew they were struggling financially after James's father stopped helping them with the mortgage, but we didn't realize how bad it had gotten. My in-laws told us that Rachel and Thomas have been borrowing money from people all over town. Friends, acquaintances, and even some of their wealthier neighbors. And it wasn't just small amounts, either. Rachel had managed to fool a lot of people with her luxury lifestyle act, convincing them that she and Thomas just needed short-term loans to tide them over until some big investment deals came through. Turns out that most of those big deals were complete lies. Rachel and Thomas had been using the money to keep up appearances, paying for their extravagant lifestyle, hosting lavish dinners, and making sure they could still show off their new house. But now people are starting to realize they've been duped. Over the past few weeks, more and more of Rachel's friends have come forward saying that she and Thomas owe them thousands of dollars. And it's not just a few friends here and there. It's a lot of people. One of Rachel's closest friends, someone she's known for years, finally confronted her about the money she was owed, and Rachel basically shut her out. This friend reached out to James's parents, telling them everything, and from what we gathered, Rachel's been avoiding her, dodging calls, and pretending nothing was wrong. My in-laws were horrified, and rightly so. They didn't raise Rachel to behave like this, but it seems like her entitlement has spiraled so far out of control that she doesn't even care about burning bridges with people who used to be close to her. But the situation with Thomas is even worse. We found out that Thomas has been borrowing money from some of his old friends as well, people from his more affluent circles. These aren't your average people lending a few $100. We're talking about very wealthy individuals who've lent him significant amounts of money, trusting that he'd pay it back given his family's old money background. But now these friends are getting fed up with his excuses. They've started demanding their money back, and instead of handling it maturely, Thomas has been lashing out. There was one particular incident that my in-laws told us about that shocked me to my core. Apparently, Thomas had been avoiding one of his wealthier friends who had loaned him a large sum of money. This friend had tried to approach Thomas at a social gathering to talk about it politely, but instead of apologizing or explaining the situation, Thomas completely lost it. He became aggressive, shouting at his friend in front of everyone and even shoved him during the argument. It got so bad that the host of the event had to intervene to calm things down. But here is where it gets even more serious. This friend that Thomas attacked isn't just some random rich guy. He's extremely well connected, with ties to some very powerful families in the area. As a result of Thomas's outburst, this man has now filed a restraining order against him. And there's talk that if Thomas doesn't pay him back soon, he could be facing a lawsuit. We're talking about some serious legal consequences here, and from what we've heard, several other people in their circle are considering taking similar action against Thomas if they don't get their money back soon. It's insane to think that Thomas could have handled this so poorly. Instead of owning up to their mistakes and trying to make things right, both he and Rachel have been doubling down, pretending that they're the victims in all of this. Thomas seems to believe that because of his family's status, he's untouchable, but clearly that's not the case. People are starting to see through their act, and the consequences are piling up fast. After hearing all of this, James and I were in complete shock. We knew Rachel and Thomas were in over their heads financially, but we had no idea it had reached this level of chaos. My in-laws are devastated. They never expected Rachel to get herself into this kind of trouble. And now they're worried that she could drag the entire family's name through the mud if this escalates any further. What's even worse is that Rachel has been continuing to harass my in-laws despite everything. She showed up at their house again recently, demanding that they help her and Thomas out of this mess. She was screaming at them, accusing them of abandoning her and leaving her to deal with all of this alone. It's like she's completely disconnected from reality. She refuses to take any responsibility for the situation she's created. My FIL told her once again that he wasn't going to give her any more money until she changed her behavior, but that just sent her into an even bigger tantrum. She left in a fury, swearing that she'd never forgive them for betraying her. It's heartbreaking to watch this unfold, especially for James, who still loves his sister despite everything. He's been trying to reach out to Rachel, but she won't even respond to him anymore. It's like she's cut off everyone who won't give her what she wants, and she's doubling down on her bad decisions. Thomas is in just as deep, and it seems like they're spiraling further into trouble with each passing day. As for us, we're doing our best to stay out of the drama, but it's hard when it feels like the whole situation is about to implode. Between the restraining orders, the looming lawsuits, and the financial chaos, I don't know how Rachel and Thomas are going to dig themselves out of this hole. My in-laws are heartbroken, and I'm worried that things are going to get even worse before they get better. I'll keep you all updated as things develop, but right now we're just trying to take things one day at a time. This whole situation feels like it's spiraling out of control, and I don't know how it's going to end. Thanks again for all the support. You've been a lifeline through this mess. Update 3. Hi everyone. A lot has happened since my last update, and I can hardly believe where things stand now. It feels like this whole situation has turned into something I never imagined possible. To those who have been following along and offering your thoughts, thank you so much. Your advice and support have meant the world to me. So, first of all, remember how I mentioned that Rachel and Thomas were in serious trouble because people were considering filing lawsuits against them? Well, that's exactly what happened. Things escalated quickly, and both Rachel and Thomas now find themselves tangled up in legal battles. It started with Thomas's wealthy friends, the ones he had borrowed large sums of money from and then either ignored or lashed out at when they asked for it back. One of the most prominent families in their circle filed a lawsuit against him, demanding immediate repayment of the money he owed, along with damages for the way he had treated them. It turns out that Thomas had been using his connections to borrow money not just for the house, but also to maintain a lifestyle that was completely beyond his means. When that lawsuit was filed, it triggered a chain reaction. Other people in their wealthy social circle followed suit, realizing they had been duped in the same way. Now Thomas is facing multiple lawsuits, all from individuals who want their money back. And they're not small amounts, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it doesn't stop there. Rachel's friends have now also filed lawsuits against both her and Thomas. These are people she's known for years, friends who trusted her enough to lend her money when she claimed she was just going through a rough patch. Many of them have come forward, admitting that Rachel had manipulated them into thinking she was still living the high life, even when everything was crumbling around her. They were appalled when they found out the truth, especially after realizing that Rachel and Thomas had no intention of paying them back. The worst part? Rachel apparently tried to play the victim, telling her friends that she was the one being abandoned by everyone and that she needed help. But no one was falling for her act anymore. Now they're both up to their necks in lawsuits. It's a mess, and I honestly don't know how they're going to handle it. Thomas, being the arrogant fool that he is, still hasn't learned a thing. You'd think that after facing this level of legal trouble, he'd realize the severity of his actions. But no, he's still trying to manipulate his way out. Believe it or not, Thomas had the nerve to text my husband again. He actually tried to bribe James, saying that if James would help smooth things over with his father, meaning convince FIL to bail them out again, Thomas would make it worth his while. Can you believe that? Even with everything crashing down around him, he's still trying to buy his way out of trouble with empty promises. James, of course, ignored him. It's almost funny how desperate and out of touch Thomas is. But here's where things get even stranger. While Thomas is digging himself deeper into this hole, it seems like Rachel has finally come to her senses, at least partially. Over the past week or so, she's been texting me, apologizing for everything that happened. At first, I wasn't even sure it was her, because she'd been using different numbers to contact me. She's blocked on my main phone, so she's resorted to messaging me from random numbers, each time with a new apology. She's been saying that she regrets the way she treated me, that she was wrong to insult my parents, and that she realizes now how much she hurt me. But no one is buying this anymore, especially me, after everything she put me through. James's parents are definitely disappointed in Rachel, but at this point, they've accepted that there's only so much they can do. They've tried to help her. They've given her opportunities to turn her life around, but she squandered all of it. Phil in particular has told us that he believes this is just karma. As much as it hurts him to see his daughter in this mess, he also knows that she's reaping the consequences of her own actions. Both he and Mil have come to terms with the fact that Rachel and Thomas need to learn their lessons the hard way. They've been clear that they won't be stepping in to save her this time. It's sad to see it come to this, but it's also necessary for Rachel to understand that she can't keep taking advantage of people and expect to get away with it. As for me and James, we've been trying to distance ourselves from the chaos as much as possible. It hasn't been easy, but we're focusing on our own lives, and we're grateful that we didn't get pulled further into their mess. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who reminded me not to give in and apologize to Rachel. Looking back, I'm so glad I stood my ground. It's clear now that apologizing would have only enabled her behavior, and I'm proud that I didn't let her manipulate me into feeling guilty for something that wasn't my fault. Rachel and Thomas are facing the consequences of their own choices, and while it's painful to watch from the sidelines, it's not my responsibility to fix their mistakes. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My wife claimed she volunteered at church all day, so I followed her to the church and found out she is cheating on me with her school BF, and she's pregnant with his baby. I will start this by saying that my mother has always deeply desired to have a daughter. This was something she had dreamt of for as long as I can remember. Her excitement was palpable when she and my father discovered they were expecting their first child, which happened to be me. However, everything changed the moment she learned I was going to be a boy. She was extremely disappointed, and this disappointment wasn't something she kept to herself. In fact, she has recounted this story to me on numerous occasions throughout my life, making it clear that she had always wished for a different outcome. My parents did plan to have more children, since my mother, in particular, had her heart set on having a daughter. Unfortunately, life had other plans. After I was born, my mother started experiencing severe health complications, which over the years made it impossible for her to carry another child. The idea of never being able to conceive again was devastating for her. I can only imagine the emotional weight of that loss, and it's one I think she still carries to this day. It must have been an incredibly painful realization for her that the dream of having a daughter would never come true. In the years that followed, my mother would often speak about her yearning for a daughter, a sentiment that seemed to intensify as time went on. I would notice how she doted on my female cousins, lavishing them with affection and attention that felt like an expression of the maternal love she had always hoped to give a daughter of her own. Whether it was through extra gifts, affection, or simply the way she treated them, there was a clear difference in how she related to them compared to me. Oddly enough, this behavior of hers didn't really bother me for much of my life. I had accepted that this was just who my mother was, and I didn't take her favoritism towards my female cousins personally. I knew she loved me, and for the most part I was at peace with it. That is, until my ex-wife, Sophia, entered the picture. Sophia was the daughter of my mother's long-lost best friend from high school, someone my mother had reconnected with after many years of being out of touch. When my mother met Sophia for the first time, she was taken aback by how beautiful she was and instantly became fixated on the idea that Sophia would be the perfect match for me. At that time, I was single, and my mother had been somewhat relentless in her efforts to set me up with various women, but none of those attempts really stuck. This time, however, she was determined and persistent. She kept telling me how stunning and wonderful Sophia was, how much we'd complement each other, and eventually it became almost an obsession for her. For weeks, I endured her constant attempts to push us together, and eventually I caved. Honestly, at that point, I agreed to the blind date more out of a desire to quiet my mother than out of any real curiosity or interest. I just wanted her to stop talking about Sophia and let me go about my life. When I finally met Sophia, my first impression matched everything my mother had told me. She was, without a doubt, incredibly beautiful. But as the evening progressed and we got to know each other a little better, I realized there wasn't much substance beneath her beauty. One of the first things I always try to learn about someone is what drives them, what their goals are, and what dreams they have for their future. When I asked Sophia what she wanted to do with her life, her answer surprised me. She told me without hesitation that her dream was to be a stay-at-home mom. That's when I felt a sense of disconnect. It's not that there's anything wrong with wanting to raise a family, but at that point in my life I had very different ambitions. I wasn't even thinking about having children anytime soon, and I expected to be with someone who had aspirations beyond just starting a family. So, naturally, I asked her what she planned to do in the meantime before she had children, and her response left me even more perplexed. She simply replied that she just wanted to be a stay-at-home wife. I looked at her, perplexed, as she went on to explain that her mother had always been a stay-at-home mom for as long as she could remember, up until her dad passed away, and that in her eyes, this was the secret to her parents' successful marriage. While I could respect that it worked for her family, it felt completely different from what I was looking for in a partner. I wanted someone with passion, someone driven by a sense of purpose, whether in a career or a personal pursuit. The idea of someone wanting to be a stay-at-home spouse from the start didn't align with my values at the time. Sophia and her mom were living with their uncle, who was covering all their expenses since her mother still didn't want to work. When I came back from that first date with Sophia, I was undeniably disappointed. I had gone into the date with low expectations, mostly because I wanted to appease my mother, but coming out of it, I knew this wasn't what I was looking for. Naturally, my mother wasn't too pleased when I shared my thoughts. In fact, she was visibly upset, almost as if I had personally wronged her by not giving Sophia what she considered to be a real chance. She kept telling me that I hadn't taken the time to truly get to know Sophia, insisting that if I just tried a little harder, I would see what she saw. But I had made up my mind. I told her as firmly as I could to let the idea of us go and that it was best if we both moved on. I should have known better, though. My mother was not someone who gave up easily, especially when she had her heart set on something or, in this case, someone. Not too long after that, my mother invited me over to her house, which wasn't unusual. She would often ask me to come by for dinner or just to catch up. But this time, when I arrived, I noticed that Sophia was there as well. Apparently, my mother had taken it upon herself to invite Sophia over too, so she could force another meeting between us. Once I arrived, both my mother and father hurried out of the house with almost mischievous smiles, saying, "Enjoy your date." I was absolutely mortified. Judging by Sophia's reaction, I'm sure she felt the same. We stood there for a moment, awkwardly looking at each other, neither of us knowing quite what to say or how to handle the situation. It was like being set up on a date you hadn't agreed to, right in the middle of my own parents' home with no escape in sight. For a few minutes, we just stood there in silence, unsure of what to do. I could have easily made an excuse and left, but I didn't want to embarrass her further. After all, she was as much a victim of my mother's overzealous matchmaking as I was. So, instead of bolting, we both exchanged awkward laughs, acknowledging how bizarre the situation was, and eventually sat down to talk. I figured since we were already there and had nothing better to do, I might as well ask her to tell me more about herself. She admitted rather openly that she had liked me after our first date and was under the impression that I had liked her too. But then when I never called her back or made any effort to reach out, she was left feeling confused. I told her as gently as I could that while she was indeed a kind and beautiful person, I felt like we had very different goals in life, since she desired to be a stay-at-home wife. Sophia then explained to me that her intention wasn't to just sit around the house doing nothing, even if we didn't have children right away. She started to talk more about her volunteer work at the church and how she dedicated her days to working with children and helping those in need. Her explanation gave me a new perspective. I started to see another side of Sophia, one that I hadn't fully appreciated before. I realized that at her core, Sophia seemed to be a genuinely warm and kind person, or at least that's how she portrayed herself to me initially. Although she wasn't exactly driven by career ambitions or lofty personal goals, she seemed to have found her purpose in caring for others, and that level of generosity of spirit is rare. So, Despite the reservations I had and the lingering doubts about our compatibility, I decided to take a leap and ask her out on another date. Sophia and I ended up dating for about a year before we decided to take the next step and get engaged. I had also been promoted at work during this period, which significantly boosted my income and gave me a sense of stability. I felt financially comfortable enough to support Sophia once we got married, which gave me the confidence to propose to her. However, the timing of the proposal wasn't entirely my decision alone. Both our mothers, particularly mine, had been subtly pushing for us to get married sooner rather than later. They kept reminding us that Sophia's biological clock was ticking, even though neither of us had immediate plans to start a family. But the pressure from them was ever present, and their insistence made me think that getting married sooner was the natural next step. When we finally got engaged, my mother, true to her nature, took charge of the wedding planning. She insisted on having a grand ceremony, sparing no expense, and offered to pay for the entire event herself. My mother was determined to make Sophia's dream wedding come true, as if it were her own daughter's wedding, a gesture that was both generous and somewhat overwhelming. From the venue to the flowers to the guest list, no detail was too small for her to obsess over. The ceremony ended up being incredibly lavish, much grander than I had anticipated, but seeing how happy Sophia was made it all worthwhile. After the wedding and the honeymoon, I quickly resumed my routine at work, diving back into my job, which was more demanding than ever due to my recent promotion. Meanwhile, Sophia moved into my place, and just as we had discussed before, she began to fully embrace her role as a stay-at-home wife. She wasn't idle, though. True to her word, she continued her volunteer work at a church in my locality, which she had always been passionate about. However, it wasn't long after we settled into married life that I started noticing some things about Sophia's routine that seemed off. Since we had never lived together before, I was learning all these little details about her day-to-day habits that I hadn't been aware of when we were dating. One thing that really stood out was how she regularly insisted that I send money to her mother every month. She'd argue that we had more than enough and that, as a good son-in-law, it was my duty to help support her mom. I found it odd, especially since this was never brought up before our marriage. I had always assumed her uncle took care of her mother's needs, but now, out of nowhere, I was expected to contribute financially. Secondly, Sophia would often go out and come back home really late in the evening. I expected that since she was a stay-at-home wife, she'd be at home more often, handling household things like cooking and cleaning during the day. But instead, she always seemed rushed when I got back from work and would frantically start to cook dinner late in the evening. Whenever I asked about why she was coming home so late, she would tell me how she was helping someone, whether it was a homeless person she met or a kid from the community who needed some guidance. I didn't want to discourage her from doing what she felt was meaningful, but at the same time, I thought there was at least an understanding that, as a homemaker, she would handle certain household responsibilities. This wasn't happening. Our meals were often late, or she'd throw something together at the last minute. The laundry was never done in time, and the house was rarely cleaned the way I thought it should be. I tried not to make a big deal out of it at first, but as time went on, I couldn't help but feel frustrated. I began bringing it up with her, having several calm conversations about how she could balance her volunteer work and her responsibilities at home. Each time, she promised me she'd change and do better, but the pattern never changed. It was always the same story. Late dinners, chores left undone, and excuses about how busy she had been helping others. One weekend, when she was once again out volunteering, I decided to go surprise her at the church where she said she volunteered. I thought maybe it would be nice to spend some time with her in her element, and I figured I could even lend her a hand if she needed help with anything. When I arrived at the church, I asked around for Sophia, expecting to find her in the middle of her volunteer work. However, the people at the church seemed confused when I mentioned her name, and after asking several people, it became clear that my wife had never volunteered there. In fact, no one knew who she was. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I processed this. For months after our marriage, Sophia had been telling me that she spent her days at this particular church volunteering. But now I was hearing that she hadn't even set foot in the place. I kept trying to convince myself that maybe I had made a mistake. Perhaps I had misunderstood the name of the church, or maybe she volunteered somewhere else nearby. Later that evening, when she came home, I decided to play it cool. I casually asked her how her day was, and she launched into her usual explanation of how hard she had worked that day, telling me in detail about all the people she had helped and the things she had accomplished. After she finished, I asked her directly what church she had been volunteering at, just to see if she'd give me the same answer. Sure enough, she repeated the name of the church I had visited earlier, the same one where I had been told she didn't work. That's when it became clear to me that something was seriously wrong. Sophia had been lying to me, not just once, but repeatedly, about where she was spending her time. It wasn't just a simple misunderstanding. She had been deliberately deceiving me, and I couldn't figure out why. What was she really doing all day? Why was she lying to me over and over again? Something was definitely up, and I was determined to get to the bottom of it. The very next day, instead of heading to work as usual, I parked my car a few feet away from our house, far enough to stay out of sight but close enough to keep an eye on Sophia. I had made up my mind. I was going to follow her and see where she spent her day. I wanted her to prove me wrong, to head to the church like she always said, and for this entire suspicion to be a misunderstanding. I was even mentally preparing myself to confess to her later, apologize for doubting her, and explain that I had let my insecurity get the best of me. But what unfolded next was something I could never have prepared for. An hour after I left the house, I saw her walk out the front door, but instead of the usual conservative clothes that she often wore around the house or around me, she was dressed completely differently. In shorts and a tank top, an outfit I had never seen her wear before. I watched as she got into the car, and instead of driving in the direction of the church like I had expected, she took off in the opposite direction. My heart started racing. I followed her, staying a few cars behind to avoid raising suspicion. I kept telling myself that there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe she was running an errand, maybe she was meeting someone else from the church, maybe. Eventually, she pulled into a quiet neighborhood and parked in front of a house I didn't recognize. It wasn't her mother's place, and it didn't belong to any of her cousins, as far as I knew. I saw a man walk out of the house to greet her. My heart sank as I watched them embrace, and then, to my utter shock, they kissed in the driveway. They held each other, arms wrapped around one another, like it was the most natural thing in the world for them. Couldn't breathe. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, except I was the one crashing, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I tried to process what I had just seen. Sophia and the man then walked back inside the house, arms wrapped around each other, as if this was something they had done 100 times before. I felt sick. One thing seemed clear to me. This wasn't just a random fling or a one-time mistake. The way they interacted, the comfort between them, it was clear that this was a long-standing affair. My heart felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. All the doubts, the odd timings, the strange excuses had all started to make sense now. She had been living a double life, lying to me about where she spent her time while carrying on this affair right under my nose. My first instinct was to call my mother. I wanted to vent, to tell her everything, to hear her voice and get some sort of comfort. But I knew if I told her, she would no doubt call Sophia immediately, either out of anger or shock, and that would tip Sophia off. I didn't want Sophia to know that I had found out, at least not yet. I needed proof. I needed concrete evidence of her affair so that when the time inevitably came to confront her, I would have everything I needed to end this marriage. I had to be smart. For 2 weeks after that shocking discovery, I channeled all my energy into gathering the evidence I needed to finally confront Sophia and initiate the divorce. During this time, I met with a lawyer to ensure that my assets would be protected as much as possible when the divorce went through. I knew that Sophia and I didn't have a prenuptial agreement, and I wanted to make sure that the fallout from this betrayal didn't leave me in financial ruin. The evening I finally confronted Sophia felt surreal. I sat her down and calmly told her that I knew about her affair. She looked shocked at first and even tried to argue, to deny what I was saying. But I had come ready for this. One by one, I presented her with all the evidence I had collected over the past month. Photos of her with the man, screenshots of their text messages I had collected from her phone, and even records of the days she had lied to me about being at church. With every piece of evidence I revealed, She knew there was no way to talk her way out of this. Finally, begrudgingly, she confessed. She admitted that the man she was seeing was her high school boyfriend, which I had already figured out after doing some research and finding him on Facebook. She tried to downplay the entire affair, saying that she was just being stupid and that she was just fooling around with him, nothing serious. She insisted that she didn't intend for things to go as far as they had, but I wasn't buying it. I looked her in the eyes and firmly told her that I was going to divorce her. She was stunned. I think in some part of her mind, she believed she could talk her way out of it, that I would somehow forgive her or be swayed by her excuses. But when she realized that I was serious, she tried to fight it. She begged me to reconsider, saying that she could change and we could work things out. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. I knew that if I stayed, I would never be able to trust her again. I calmly told her to pack up her bags and leave. To make sure there would be no confusion or attempts to manipulate the situation with our families, I created a group chat with my parents and Sophia's mother. In the chat, I laid everything out clearly. I sent all the proof of Sophia's infidelity. The photos, the text messages, everything. I wanted them to know the full truth about why I was divorcing her, and I wanted to prevent any false narratives from being spun by either Sophia or her mother. I knew that once the news broke, all hell would break loose, and I wasn't about to leave room for any misunderstandings. As expected, the reactions were intense. My mother was absolutely livid, outraged that Sophia had betrayed me, but at the same time, she and Sophia's mother couldn't help but beg me to reconsider my decision. Despite the undeniable evidence of Sophia's infidelity, they pleaded with me to find it in my heart to forgive her and give her another chance. Thankfully, my dad stood by my side. He reassured me that I was making the right decision and that no one should stay with a cheating partner, no matter the circumstances. He told me I deserved better and supported my decision to move forward with the divorce. A week after I filed for divorce, Sophia and her mother showed up at my house unexpectedly. Sophia revealed to me that she was pregnant with my child. My immediate reaction was disbelief. I outright refused to accept that I was the father, given her affair. Sophia's mother lashed out at me, accusing me of ruining her daughter's life by not accepting responsibility for the baby and divorcing Sophia so suddenly. She made it seem like I was the one being cruel. Later, my own mother doubled down on her pleas. She talked to me about how children can change everything in a marriage, about how having a baby could bring Sophia and me closer, as if the pregnancy was some magical solution to the infidelity. She told me that Sophia had promised to never cheat again and that I needed to consider the child's future, not just my pride. She made me feel like the bad guy for choosing to walk away from a marriage where the trust was gone. When I still didn't give in to her reasoning, my mother, in her desperation, threatened to testify against me in court when the time came, especially if the issue of child support arose. She said she would make sure I paid for the baby, regardless of whether or not it was mine. DNA doesn't matter. Family is family, she argued, implying that she didn't care who the biological father was. She was determined to claim the child as her grandchild, even if it meant going against me in court. And that is exactly what she did. True to her word, my mother testified against me during the divorce proceedings, which was one of the most painful betrayals I've ever experienced. My lawyer and I fought hard to make sure that the court understood that Sophia had been unfaithful and that there was a very real possibility that the child wasn't mine. But my mother and Sophia's mother testified that Sophia's affair wasn't anything sexual, downplaying her infidelity as if it had been some sort of an innocent mistake. They even argued that because Sophia and I had been intimate just weeks before our separation, right around the time I had discovered her affair, the baby must be mine only. Thankfully, in the end, the judge ruled that they couldn't make any final decision regarding child support or paternity until after the baby was born and a proper paternity test needed to be conducted. Only then would it be determined whether or not I was the biological father. I was relieved. It felt like a small victory in what had been a draining and painful process. At least now I wouldn't be forced into supporting a child that might not be mine without solid proof. But my mother, Sophia, and her mother were furious with the outcome. My mother later came up to me and told me how she wished I was not her child, and that if I was truly a man then I should pull my pants up and accept Sophia's child as mine regardless of what the paternity test proves. Over the past months, my mother has gone around bad-mouthing me to everyone in our family, painting me out as the villain who destroyed my marriage over what she insisted was just Sophia's one-time mistake. No matter how much proof I presented or how many logical arguments I made, my mother clung to her narrative, blaming me for everything that had gone wrong. So you can imagine my satisfaction when the day finally came for the paternity test results. Sophia gave birth to a girl this week, and we promptly had the test done. It turned out that the baby did not belong to me as expected. When I shared the results with Sophia, she broke down in tears, pleading with me to accept the child. She argued that her friends and family were going to shun her and her daughter if I didn't step up and take responsibility. I felt a deep pit of sympathy for her situation, but it didn't change the fact that I was not the father. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that," I told her firmly. "It's no longer my responsibility." Since then, Sophia has continued to call me and leave me voice messages, begging me to reconsider for not claiming Sophia's baby as mine. Update 1. So for everyone asking, Sophia is arguing that since I probably won't have kids anytime soon, I should think of this baby as mine, even though she cheated on me. She also revealed that the guy she was having an affair with, her high school sweetheart, has refused to marry her. In fact, he has never been ready to settle down, which is why she had to marry me in the first place. It's clear she wanted to use me as a cash cow while continuing her affair with him. Honestly, I hope she at least takes him to court for child support, but at this point I just don't care anymore. Update 2. I took everyone's advice and made a post to publicly announce that I am not the father of Sophia's child. I was tired of my mom supporting Sophia after the way she had cheated on me and wanted to humiliate her just the way she had done to me for months on end. Well, guess what? After I made my post calling out my mom for backing Sophia, she called me furious because people had started to turn on her. She accused me of betraying her, which was ironic since she was the one who actually backstabbed me by testifying against me in court and trying to make me pay child support. A lot of my mom's friends and relatives had actually believed her at first, but now with the paternity test results in, it is clear that my mom was wrong about Sophia. People are calling her out in the comments of my post as well as to her face, telling her she needs to be a better parent to me and how I'm the actual victim in this situation. After my mother called to yell at me, she and Dad ended up having a huge fight. He was fed up with her constantly bullying me and threatened to leave her if she didn't drop her crazy idea of forcing me to accept Sophia's child, even though it's not mine. Update 3. It's been 5 months since my last update. My parents have decided to separate this past month. This is because my mom has refused to change and has even started calling herself Grandma to Sophia's baby. She's been giving Sophia money every month and even volunteers to babysit her child. It seems like she's finally living out a dream of having a long-lost daughter, just like she had always wanted. However, my dad has grown tired of this, as he feels this is borderline inappropriate and wants nothing to do with Sophia or her child. This has resulted in multiple fights where my mother has refused to take accountability. As a result, my dad has moved out and has been staying with me. It breaks my heart that my mom is choosing to focus on my cheater ex-wife's daughter over her own family. Anyway, my dad will be talking to a lawyer this week and moving forward with the divorce. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Sil asked me to be a bridesmaid, made me plan and pay for her bachelorette trip, then kicked me out of her wedding because I'm pregnant. I found out she only friended me to use me. So, my sister-in-law, Bonnie, 26F, is getting married in a week, and she just disinvited me from her wedding about 3 days ago. The reason for that is extremely petty, stupid, and selfish. It's because I'm pregnant, but I haven't even started showing yet, and there is literally no chance that I'm going to be able to steal her thunder, which is what she's afraid of. It stings even more because she had asked me to be a bridesmaid a couple of months ago when she first got engaged. Before that, we were not particularly close, and I was actually really surprised that she had asked me to be a bridesmaid for her. I have been with my husband for 5 years, married for 3, and before she got engaged, Bonnie had never put in an effort to build a relationship with me. She had mostly just been indifferent, so it wasn't like we didn't get along, but we certainly were not the best of friends. When she asked me to be a bridesmaid along with her other friends, I had initially been skeptical. But then she had told me that she was aware of the fact that we hadn't been close, But now she wanted to fix that, and that's why she was asking me. It took a couple of minutes of convincing, but eventually, I agreed because I thought it was exciting. Over the last couple of months, things have been great with her, and I thought that we were becoming really close friends. I was an active part of the wedding planning, and she trusted me enough, or so it seemed. One of the major things that she had asked me to do as a bridesmaid was organize her bachelorette trip to Bali. My parents have a travel agency that I run alongside them, which is why she had that special request for me, and since by then we were getting along quite well, I agreed to do it for her. Usually, most travel agencies require you to pay a certain amount upfront, and the rest you can pay after the trip. We have a similar policy, but just because Frankie is family, I agreed to organize the entire trip for her without any payment upfront at her insistence. She had promised me that she would pay me back the entire amount after the wedding and would even get me to organize her honeymoon, which meant more business for us. All I had to do was pay out of pocket this one time, just for her. Of course, I was a little dicey about it at first because this business belongs to my parents as well, but then we have been doing well, and because she was family, I could afford to cut her some slack. So, not only was the entire trip for her and all the other bridesmaids organized completely by me, it was also paid for by me. We had great fun for one whole week, and I funded the trip for 6 women all by myself, so I think that would be a big reason to be grateful to me. But I don't think Frankie seems to care because a couple of days after we came back from the trip, I started to feel really sick in the morning and ended up puking my guts out. I get really easily scared when it comes to my health, so my husband and I immediately decided to visit the doctor to find out if something was wrong with us because I was convinced that I had caught some sort of stomach bug while traveling. However, that day we learned that I was just 6 weeks pregnant, and what I was experiencing was just morning sickness, so there was nothing to worry about. My husband and I were obviously thrilled, and we immediately contacted our families to tell them about it. We only told our immediate families, our parents and our siblings, and everyone seemed to be happy for us, with the exception of Frankie. When we told her, she seemed very subdued, and even when she was congratulating us, it did not feel genuine. That day itself, we did not think much of it because we had other things on our minds. But a few days after that, I ended up receiving a text from Frankie saying that she had decided that it would be best to disinvite me from the wedding given the circumstances, and that she hopes that I would not take offense at this. I was really shocked because barely a week had passed since we had come back from her bachelorette trip that I had organized and paid for, and according to me, there really wasn't any reason for her to be behaving like this. I tried to call her after that, but she did not answer, and even when I tried to text her, she did not respond. I even spoke to my husband about it, and he tried to contact her as well, but she just kept ignoring us. I was obviously really upset about it because I really couldn't think of a reason that she would disinvite me to her wedding all of a sudden after everything that happened in the past couple of months, the way we had bonded, and whatever I had done for her. She continued to ignore us for a couple of days, but I kept trying to contact her, and 3 days ago, she finally answered one of my phone calls. She sounded really annoyed on the phone and told me that I needed to stop calling her so frequently. But I didn't care. I just wanted to know why she was doing this and acting so weird all of a sudden. Then Frankie snapped at me and told me that the reason she did not want me at the wedding was that I had managed to get myself knocked up right around the time of her wedding. And as the bride, she did not want her pregnant sister-in-law stealing her thunder, and told me that it really wasn't that difficult to figure out. After saying that, she hung up on me, and I was just shocked that this was the real reason. Before that, when she had been ignoring me, it had occurred to me that she had disinvited me right after we had found out that I was pregnant, and the timing seemed a little too suspicious, but I had dismissed that as a reason because I really did not think that Frankie would be so petty and insecure. Of course, I was proved wrong later, and the way she had behaved with me on the phone call had really upset me. I also felt kind of used because of the whole situation with the trip, and after speaking to my husband about it, I decided that I was fine with not attending, and I would also ask her to return all the money that she owed me. Even my husband was really upset with how his sister was treating me, and he told me that he was also going to inform her that he would not be attending. So that day, after that phone call, he sent her a message saying that he would not be attending either because of the way she had behaved with me, and that she needed to return all the money at the earliest. She replied to that message within an hour, saying that we were being unreasonable and that she had a perfectly valid reason not to want me at the wedding because I was pregnant and she just couldn't risk. I just couldn't understand what she was so afraid of because I was not even showing, so nobody would be able to figure out that I was pregnant unless I told them myself, and we didn't want anybody finding out yet either, so we were obviously going to keep that information to ourselves. And even her parents, the only other people who knew about it, were not going to talk about it. Besides, she has to give us some credit. Of course, we are raised well enough to know that we are not supposed to make announcements like these at somebody else's wedding, and I would never do that to anyone. So if anything, it was she who was being unreasonable. Afterward, my husband got into a fierce argument with her over the phone when she called him up to convince him to attend the wedding because otherwise, it would raise a lot of questions. Ultimately, they ended that argument on a really bitter note, and my husband decided to stick to his decision of not attending the wedding because of how I had been treated, and he even told his parents about it, who didn't say anything because they wanted to stay out of it, and we respect that. But things got worse when Frankie decided to tell her friends about what had happened because now they have also started to back out of the wedding. We had a group with all the bridesmaids, and yesterday, I was removed from that group by Frankie. I'm assuming that people started asking questions after that, and Frankie must have told the truth because a couple of hours after I was removed, I started receiving messages from her friends telling me that they were on my side here and that what Frankie was doing was really stupid and petty. I really appreciated the fact that her friends had reached out to me personally to tell me that they were on my side here, but I was also equally upset about the fact that she had decided to talk about my pregnancy to her friends without even consulting with me first. She knew for a fact that I wanted to keep my pregnancy private for a while, and if she had brought it up in the bridesmaids group, it meant that her cousin also knew that I was pregnant since she was also a bridesmaid. Her cousin hadn't reached out to me, but her friends told me that she had explained the situation to them in a couple of voice notes that she had sent to the group, and everybody had heard those. I got really mad because she had no right to do that. My husband and I wanted to talk about the pregnancy and tell people about it when we were ready. Even if I made my peace with the fact that her friends knew about it because it's not like they are connected to anyone that we know in the family or know any of our friends, her cousin also knew, and she was a part of the family so she could easily tell her parents about it, and then the entire family would slowly find out before we were ready to talk about it. I did speak to the cousin right after I found out about the voice notes and I requested her not to tell anyone about the pregnancy, but by then she had already told her parents. Thankfully, she promised us that she would convince her parents not to talk to anybody else about it. It's pretty exciting news for the family if I'm being honest, since my husband is the oldest amongst all the cousins in his generation and he's really loved in the family. Anyway, we managed to bring that situation under control, but we were still very upset with what Frankie had done because she had been running her mouth when there was no need to do so. So right now, we are very upset with her, and I don't really feel like forgiving her. I know that she's getting married in a week, and her friends have started to back out of the wedding. They are threatening not to attend if Frankie doesn't fix the situation with me, and that's why she has reached out to me to apologize and invite me to the wedding again. But I really don't feel like attending anymore. Now it's not just what had happened and how she had behaved with me after she found out about the pregnancy that was bad enough on its own, but what she did recently by telling her bridesmaids about my pregnancy without my consent, that's what really ticked me off even more. And like I said, I also feel really used because I feel like so far she was only being nice to me because she wanted me to organize the bachelorette trip for her and because as family, she could always pay me at her leisure, which is not something she would be able to do anywhere else. There are just a lot of things that are bothering me about her right now, and I really don't think that I'll be able to sit through her wedding or attend as a bridesmaid after everything that has happened. I wouldn't have an issue with my husband attending or even with her friends being there for her, but I personally wouldn't want to be there. The problem that has come up right now is that my husband doesn't want to attend without me, and her friends have made it very clear to her that they are not attending if I'm not going to be there because they believe that whatever Frankie said and done was unforgivable, especially considering everything that I had done for her so far with the trip and everything. So she desperately needs me to be present at the wedding, and even my in-laws have contacted me to try and tell me that she is miserable and she really feels apologetic for everything, so they would be very grateful if I managed to forgive her and attend the wedding for their sake. And I really wish I could forgive her, but even if I did, I really wouldn't feel right attending her wedding. The most I can do for her is convince my husband and her friends to attend and be there for her. But so far, even that seems pretty impossible because my husband has his mind made up and has told me that he's not going to be attending any event where his wife isn't wanted. And it's so sweet of him that I can't even bring myself to argue with that. As for her friends, I have tried to text them and tell them that I would really want them to attend the wedding and do their bridesmaids' duties because whatever is happening between me and Frankie is between us and I would hate for her wedding to be ruined because of me, but most of them have just been dodging that topic and have told me that they are just doing what they think is the right thing to do, And apparently there are also other reasons apart from this, which is why they're not keen on attending the wedding right now. I'm just at a loss because the wedding is in a week, and I truly don't know what to do. Am I the a-hole for refusing to forgive my sister-in-law and attend her wedding, even after she apologized for messing up? Edit. So I spoke to her friends about the other reasons that they had for not wanting to be there at the wedding, and apparently she has changed a lot ever since she got engaged and has turned into a bit of a bridezilla. They were not really willing to bring it all up with me because they were not sure of how I would react, and they did not want to make it look like they were gossiping about her behind her back because of one fight. But they were just finding it very difficult to deal with her in the past couple of months because of her terrible behavior. A couple of her friends had known her since high school, and one of them had known her since college, and all of them agreed that there had been a significant change in her behavior in the recent past, and she had been acting far more entitled than she used to be. Several times over the past couple of months, she had lost her temper with them. She had snapped at them for stupid things and had expected them to do everything for her without even thanking them. And I had also picked up on this a couple of times while we were on the bachelorette trip, and she had ended up being rude to some of her friends and even some of the staff at the hotel, but I did not think much of it. She had spared me the treatment probably because I was paying for everything and she couldn't afford to make me mad. But looking back, I guess it was true. Apparently, the incident with me had just been the last straw because she had expected everyone to be on her side after she told them everything about the situation with me, and when they had tried to tell her that what she was doing was not right and she owed me an apology, she snapped at all of them again and told them that she was going to do whatever she wanted. That was the final nail in the coffin for most of them, and they realized that she had been treating them really badly, and her behavior had become intolerable to the point where they did not even want to be around her anymore. And after that last fight that they had because of the situation with me, they decided that they were not going to be attending the wedding, and I think it's pretty valid. Honestly, they put up with this kind of disrespectful behavior for a lot longer than I would have entertained, and at this point, I don't really blame them for wanting to back out of the wedding. I don't even think that I can help it. The most I can do is try to convince my husband at this point. Update 1. Hey, thank you so much for the response on my post. So there are just 3 days to go before the wedding, and I have decided that I'm not going to be attending. I have spoken to my in-laws about it as well, and I've told them that I really racked my brains for a reason to forgive her, but after everything that I have found out, I really don't feel like being around her, especially after talking to her friends about her behavior. I realized that she has not just been treating me like this. She has been treating everybody badly. The only reason I was spared for the past couple of months was because she had been counting on me to organize and finance her bachelorette trip until she felt like paying me back. Probably because she didn't want to cough up all that money at once since she was also going to have to think about the wedding expenses. And because she knew for a fact that she could convince me to cover her expenses until she could afford to pay me back, she had been treating me well. But now that the trip was done with, she did not feel the need to play nice with me anymore, and that explained the sudden change in her behavior. It was clear that she was acting like a total bridezilla, and I did not feel that it was necessary for me to put up with her behavior. My in-laws seemed disappointed, but they did not say anything, for which I'm grateful. Of course, they are going to be upset about this because it's their daughter's wedding, and since I'm not going to forgive her, even my husband is not going to be attending, and that's not going to be a good look for the family, so I can totally understand why they are disappointed. But I'm really glad that they did not question my decision or try to make me the bad guy here, and were understanding and respectful. However, Frankie did not take this as well as they did. When I reached out to her and I told her that I would not be attending the wedding and I really tried to convince my husband, but he doesn't want to attend either and there's nothing that I can do about it, she called me up and started screaming at me about how I was ruining everything for her and that I was the biggest attention seeker and that she knew for a fact that I was only doing this to get revenge on her. She said some really derogatory stuff to me, and usually I'm not the kind of person to entertain this kind of behavior. I just cut them off. But this time, I decided to hit back because I couldn't just let her get away with saying whatever she wanted to me. So I cursed back at her and I told her that all of this was her own fault. She had no right to be blaming me for any of it. I told her that if she had just been a decent and secure person and not disinvited me from the wedding just because I was pregnant, none of this would be happening in the first place. I also called her out on the fact that she owed me a huge amount of money because I had funded the bachelorette trip, yet she had the audacity to behave this way with me. It just spoke volumes about how ungrateful and entitled she was. She tried to downplay the importance of that by saying that I was being stingy and tacky by bringing up the money over and over again. But honestly, it was a huge amount of money, and I never would have funded the trip had she not been my family. I had done it as a special favor to her, and I was going to remind her of it because the way she had been behaving with me required me to put her in her place. You don't bite the hand that feeds, I think everybody knows that. I told her that she was ungrateful and that I was right for not wanting to attend the wedding because after the way she had been treating me and everybody else, she totally deserved this. So far, I had actually been trying to convince my husband to attend the wedding without me because I did not want to ruin it for her and her family, mostly for my in-laws because they were good people. But now I was glad that my husband had decided not to attend because she was just a straight-up terrible person, and she had made her bed, so she now had to lie in it. After that, she started cursing at me again. But then I hung up because I had already said whatever I needed to say, and I did not see the point of carrying on the conversation anymore. Once that conversation was over, I called my husband and I told him everything, and he told me that I had done the right thing because under usual circumstances, even he would advise me to just ignore her, but at some point you just reach a place where you just have to turn around and hit back because the other person needs to know that they cannot get away with everything. And I'm glad that I said whatever I said. I don't even care if she's getting married in a couple of days. She needed to hear this. Anyway, after this conversation, my husband and I know for sure that we will definitely not be attending the wedding, and I know it will raise a lot of awkward questions for his parents, but at least I'll have the satisfaction of knowing that I tried my best to keep the situation under control, and it was really not my fault. Update 2. So, a very interesting update on the situation. I just got off a phone call with Frankie's maid of honor. She's one of Frankie's oldest friends. They have been together since middle school, and she was probably the only person who I hadn't spoken to so far. I've got to say, I wasn't expecting her to call me at any point, but today, I guess even she came to her senses and decided to do the right thing. She is not backing out of the wedding. She just called me to tell me that I had been right about Frankie using me for the trip. When she called me, she started off by telling me that it had been really difficult for her to make this decision because Frankie was her best friend, but given her recent behavior, even she couldn't deny that she had turned into a totally different person, and even though Frankie had always been a bit spoiled, this was just taking things to a whole new level. She told me that she was going to honor the commitment that she had made and was going to see the wedding through as the maid of honor. But after the wedding, even she planned on distancing herself from Frankie. But before that, she wanted me to know that she and Frankie had had a discussion about me several months ago, and Frankie had mentioned to her that I ran a travel agency with my parents, so it would be quite convenient for her to make me a bridesmaid and improve her relationship with me so when the time comes, I would agree to organize and fund the bachelorette trip. In that way, she could take her own sweet time to pay me back, which is not something she would be able to do with other travel agents. So, basically, I had been right about her making me a bridesmaid and trying to improve her relationship with me just so that she would be able to take advantage of my position. It was a little disheartening to know that I had been right, but at this point, I'm not surprised. I thanked her for telling me the truth because I knew that Frankie would never have admitted to it, and after that, she hung up and requested me not to tell Frankie about the conversation that I had with her, which I'm going to keep a secret. Anyway, there's enough drama surrounding the wedding as it is. I don't think I need to add on to it anymore. I discussed that phone call with my husband, and we think it's really sad that Frankie hasn't been able to hold on to any of her friends. And now she's going to lose her oldest friend just because of her own terrible behavior. It would be one thing if she was ready to acknowledge it and work on it, but I don't think she is. I think she actually believes that having a ring on her finger entitles her to everything in the world, and she can hurt and disrespect whoever she wants in the process. I don't think she has to ask that she's not the only woman on the planet to get married, and planning a wedding might be stressful, but you don't get to take that out on all of your friends and well-wishers without facing the consequences. Anyway, she's going to learn that now, and she's going to have to learn it the hard way. I wish her husband the best, honestly, since I have a feeling he's going to need it. Update 3. Hi, so Frankie got married 2 days ago, and we did not attend, and as far as I know, neither did any of her friends whom she had disrespected over the past couple of months. Apparently, she had kicked all of them out of the bridesmaid group a night before the wedding, and that was that. The only 2 people who were there at the wedding were her best friend and her cousin. To be honest, her cousin was only there because her parents were going to be attending anyway, and she did not want to create drama in the family, so she decided to attend and fulfill her bridesmaid duties. And we already knew that her best friend was going to be there as maid of honor, so that was not a surprise. But deep down, we all know the truth, that all these people are sick of her, and that it's all her own fault. A lot of people did reach out to me and my husband and asked us why we had not attended the wedding, and we gave them the same explanation that our in-laws had come up with, that I was extremely sick, down with a stomach flu, and I needed somebody to stay with me and take care of me, and that's why neither of us attended. So in the end, I guess it worked out for all of us, probably not in the way that Frankie had expected. But well, she's a grown woman, and she can handle the consequences of her own actions. I just decided to write about it now because a couple of hours ago, I received the money that she owed me, and now that we are even, I think it's time that we collectively move on from this episode. I don't think my husband and I want anything to do with her beyond this point, and I'm sure that she feels the same way about us as well. Well, now onwards, I'm just going to be focusing on the positives, like my pregnancy and how I'm going to be a mother in a couple of months. My husband and I are really excited, and that's what I'm going to stay focused on right now. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My husband spent $25,000 from our savings on his sister's gift. When I confronted him, he called me a stupid housewife and told me to get a job. 2 weeks later, he's begging for my help. My husband, Peter, 33M, and I, 30F, have been married for 3 years, and before that, we had been together for 3 years too. I've known his family for almost 6 years, and I've gotten along with most of them, except for his sister, Lucy, 27F. Brat is usually a word reserved for younger kids who tend to act out a lot when they don't get their way, but I think it fits pretty well for Lucy as well. She's the youngest of 3 kids and the only daughter, so I guess that's why her parents have always spoiled her, and to a certain extent so have her brothers. But as an adult, her father and my brother-in-law don't really treat her all that differently anymore. However, I can't say the same for her mother and my husband. I get along decently with my mother-in-law most of the time, and I love my husband, but the two of them are mostly responsible for the spoiled way that she still acts. When I met her for the first time, she didn't like me right off the bat because I did not treat her any differently from the rest of the family. But I didn't think I should have had to. Anyway, since then, she has never been nice to me and has always had a very weird attitude when she's around me. The sad thing is that it doesn't even bother me because I know that she's a brat and a grown woman who cannot handle not being the center of attention everywhere. I don't think I need her approval in the first place, so I've never tried to be her friend. Peter doesn't like this, and he has tried to tell me that I should at least make some effort to befriend her several times, but I've never paid attention to it. After we got married, he stopped trying, but he has always treated his sister like a princess, and I've never had an issue with it until recently. So far, it was only his behavior through which he was spoiling her by validating her all the time, even when she would do something wrong, and always prioritizing her over everything else. Occasionally, he would splurge a little on her, but that was a pretty reasonable amount and he would never go overboard. But 2 weeks ago, at her birthday party, he gave her a present worth $25,000, and that's where I draw the line. It was a stunning jewelry set that she had been talking about for weeks and had told him that she was saving up money for it. So he decided to give it to her as her older brother to make her day. And not even for a second did he consider the fact that financially we were not in a position to be just giving out such expensive gifts from luxury brands. He hadn't discussed it with me earlier, which I think he really should have because it's a huge amount. What's worse is that he had withdrawn that amount from our joint savings account. After he gave her the gift at her birthday party and everyone started going crazy over it, I had to pull him aside for a second because I was really confused about what was going on. Earlier, we had decided that we were just going to give her a normal gift, and that's what I had brought along. He explained to me that he had been assigned a pretty big project with an extremely prestigious client at work, and that meant a big fat check as an advance. He had deposited that in the joint savings account. But a few days after that, Lucy started talking about the jewelry set that she wanted, and he just knew that he had to get it for her. So he decided to make a withdrawal from the account and purchase that set for her so he could give it to her as a present on her birthday. He told me that the rest of the payment for the project that he had taken on would come through in a couple of months, so it didn't matter that he had splurged a little right now. I thought it was strange that I hadn't received any notifications from the bank since I had alerts set up for every transaction. My husband confessed to me that the day that he had deposited the check at the bank, he had come home and while I was sleeping, he had disabled all text alerts from the bank from the app. He knows that I don't really check my email very often, so he knew that he was safe and I wouldn't find out. He told me that he had initially done it because he wanted me to be surprised when he told me about the project. But after that, when he decided to use some of the money from the advance payment to buy that present for Lucy, he thought that it would be best that I wasn't notified by the bank, so he did not enable those alerts again. I thought that this was very dishonest and disrespectful to me, and had been feeling quite annoyed while he was explaining all of this to me. So once he was done talking, I told him that this was absolutely unacceptable behavior and that I did not appreciate the fact that he had purchased such an expensive gift for his sister without even consulting me first, especially considering the fact that the money that he had withdrawn had been from our joint savings account and it was supposed to be for both our futures, not just him. After marriage, when we had made that account, we had decided that we were not going to touch any of that money until we had a baby because this was for the future, and both of us had honored that agreement until recently. When I confronted him about all of this and I told him that I was not happy with this decision, he got really nasty with me. He told me that I didn't have any siblings, so he didn't expect me to understand what he was doing. He also said that Lucy was really important to him and as her older brother, he could give her as many expensive gifts as he wanted to, and I had no right to stand in the way of that. I tried to argue with him, telling him that we had already agreed that we were going to start trying for a baby by the end of this year, so we had to save money for that, and as his wife, I had every right to talk about our finances if I thought he was going overboard. But then he said something really mean and called me a stupid and irrational housewife who was just jealous of my sister-in-law, and told me to get a job, so I wouldn't waste his time and energy by creating drama about such petty stuff. Then he went back to the party and left me standing all by myself in a corner, and I had to try really hard to hold back my tears while I walked to the car and started driving back home. Once I was inside the car, I drove a little farther away, and then I finally broke down while crying. I called my parents up and I asked them if they would be okay with having me stay with them for a couple of days because I just needed to get away from Peter. What he had said about me just being a housewife and needing to get a job really got under my skin because I had only been a housewife for the past 4 months. I had to quit my previous job because I wasn't getting the kind of opportunities that I wanted, and I felt like my potential was being wasted there. I had spent quite some time there and had been feeling trapped, so after some discussion with Peter, I decided to quit, and he knew that I was going to do this. At the time, he had been very supportive of it and had told me to go for it because he said that I had better employment opportunities in store for me, given my talent and dedication. I had been looking for job opportunities to my taste for the past 4 months but hadn't been able to find anything that really appealed to me. So I still kept looking because I didn't want to waste my time at another dead-end job. In the meantime, I had taken over all the household chores because I didn't want to sit at home uselessly. So I guess I was a housewife, but just because I was in between jobs at the moment. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with being a housewife, but the way that he said it, that was obviously meant to insult me. Even when I had quit my job, we had decided that he was still going to keep putting aside a share of his income for the savings account, and once I started working again, I would resume as well. But just because I had told him that I didn't appreciate him buying expensive gifts for Lucy, especially when we were not even sure if we could afford them yet or not, he had turned the entire situation around on me and made me feel terrible about things that he himself encouraged initially. The fact that he had insulted me because of money made me feel terrible, and after the party I drove back home, packed some of my things and moved in with my parents. Since then, I have been living here because he refuses to acknowledge that he did something wrong and apologizes for it. He had reached out to me the day after the party and told me that he really wanted to make this marriage work, but he's not going to apologize because he didn't think that he did anything wrong by giving his sister a gift. He also told me that the reason he had said all those things was because he was really annoyed with me and he knew that he had taken things too far, but I had been the one provoking him on purpose, especially since I knew that his family was his weakness, but I just kept triggering him. But I didn't care. I told him that I was going to stand my ground and that I was not coming back home until he apologized. And since then we had been arguing back and forth for quite some time. 2 weeks have passed since then, and I've been miserable, but at least my parents have been by my side. He hadn't even been here to see me. We had only been talking on the phone and through texts. However, last evening he showed up in person and told me that it was an emergency and that he absolutely needed to talk to me. My parents were not exactly happy to see him, but they still allowed him to enter, and we had a chat in the living room where he told me that I was right about everything and he had been a total jerk. So he had come to apologize to me for it and also to ask for my help because something happened at work, and now he needed to return all the money that he had received. Apparently, his company had lost the project, and the client had made a deal with another company. So now, according to the contract, they had to return any advance payment that they had received in full. And as we all know, he had already spent $25,000 of that payment on a gift for his sister. While he had been at work, his boss had told him all about it and demanded that he clear the payment by the end of the week. He was in big trouble now because before he came to me, he had gone to his sister's house and told Lucy about the situation that he was in, and with a heavy heart, he had to ask her to return the gift to him, and since he still had the receipt, he could get his money back. She hadn't had any occasion to wear it yet, so it was still unused, but in true Lucy fashion, she refused. I don't think anybody who has known her is going to be surprised by this because she has always been a spoiled and selfish brat, and this was exactly what I expected from her. But for whatever reason, Peter was surprised, and while telling me what Lucy had said, I could see that he really hadn't seen this coming, which just speaks volumes about how naive and blind he had been. Apparently, Lucy had told him that she already felt very emotionally attached to that gift, and she was really sorry, but she couldn't return it to him. And even when Peter requested her to understand his situation, she started throwing a temper tantrum and told him that once he had already gifted her something, he couldn't take it back and asked him to go away after they got into an argument over this. Then he decided to call his parents, and while his father was at least sympathetic with him, his mother told him outright that he had no business asking for his gift back and that Lucy was right. She was not obliged to return it to him. They told him to figure out another solution on his own and left it at that. After that, he even reached out to his younger brother out of desperation, but my brother-in-law straight up refused to get involved. So when nobody from his family had come to his rescue, he had decided to come to me with nowhere else to go. All of a sudden, he had a conscience and he felt like he needed to talk to me, which he obviously did because he had nobody else on his side right now. He told me that now he would have to dip into our savings for another $25,000 so he could clear the payment by the end of the week, or else he would be in big trouble at work and might even get fired, and he couldn't afford that. Peter also said that he could have easily withdrawn the money beforehand and then told me about it after it was already done, but because he wanted to be honest with me and show me how sincere he was about his apology, he had decided to approach me before he did any of that, so he would have my consent since it was money that belonged to both of us. I could tell that he was just grasping at straws because he didn't want to lose me, but he also didn't want to lose his money. So he had come to me pretending as if he was really sorry about what had happened. So I told him, since he had screwed up personally, the $25,000 that he needed to return would have to come out of his own pockets and not from our joint savings. I also told him that he hadn't been doing me a favor by coming to me and telling me about his intentions of withdrawing another huge sum of money from our joint account just so he could cover up his own mistakes. I would have found out about it eventually because this time the bank would definitely notify me since I had enabled the alerts again, and I was not staying with him, so he couldn't disable it without my knowledge. The only reason he was even apologizing to me right now was because he felt guilty since I had been right about everything, especially about Lucy, and since nobody from his family was on his side, he needed me to be there for him. I told him that he was an extremely selfish man and that I did not have any intention of agreeing to his plan of withdrawing the money from our savings. He had to use his personal savings for it because he was the one who had messed up, and if he was really sorry, then he would not argue with me. But he still continued to fight with me and told me that he was the one who had been saving money all on his own for the past couple of months, and I hadn't been able to make a single contribution because I hadn't even been working, so just to make things fair, I should have agreed to his terms, but I was being unreasonable. He told me that, as his wife, I should stand by him in such difficult times since he had ended up in a fight with his family and has also lost a huge project on the same day. I just reminded him of what he had said to me and how he had insulted me on purpose the other day at the party, and then I told him that if I had behaved with him in the same way and put him down like that, he wouldn't have thought twice before filing for a divorce. But at least I was still trying to make it work and giving him a chance to fix things because I loved him. To defend himself, he couldn't come up with anything valid, so he just started yelling about how money isn't everything and that I should think about his feelings and his situation right now as well instead of being just as selfish as his family. I literally laughed out loud when he said that money wasn't everything because if it wasn't, then why not sacrifice your own money instead of our joint savings? He had no answer for that, so I told him that ultimately it was his call what he wanted to do since technically I couldn't stop him from using the money from our savings account. But I had made up my mind about what I wanted to do when I was going to speak to a lawyer the next day and put an end to all of this. I was done being pushed around and made to feel bad about myself, so I told him that I was no longer willing to fight for our marriage anymore. When I implied that I was going to speak to a lawyer and file for divorce, he completely lost it and started screaming at me, telling me that I was being selfish and unreasonable. Then from yelling at me, he went to just screaming in general about how everything was unfair and how everyone was letting him down in ways that he didn't even know were possible. At that point, I felt kind of bad for him because he had lost a huge project at work that day. Then his family had let him down, and after that, when he came to me to feel better, I also told him that I was not going to be there for him anymore. Needless to say, his day was not going very well, and he started having a breakdown in the living room. At that moment, I really didn't know what to say or do for him because on one hand, I felt terrible, but on the other hand, I couldn't forget the insult. So I just ended up standing there quietly for a few minutes before going to his side, patting him on the back, and telling him that everything was going to be fine eventually, but he needed to pull himself together. I tried to be as kind as possible, but in my head, I had already made up my mind that I was going to leave him, and I was firm about it. A couple of minutes later, once he was done having a breakdown, he just abruptly got up and left without even saying goodbye. After he left, I called up our family lawyer and explained the situation to him, and he put me in touch with a divorce attorney late at night, and on the phone call itself we decided to meet today, and within this week we are going to file for a divorce. I was pretty sure about everything until this morning, but then I received a text from Peter saying that he was sorry about everything and that he was going to pay the $25,000 out of his own pocket and not use our savings. He told me that he hadn't been thinking straight last evening and he had been a complete mess because he had lost a big project, which is why he had ended up acting out like that. But he really wanted to make it work with me, and he knew that I loved him, and he loved me too, so he wanted to give us one final chance and wanted me to consider it as well. So now I'm suddenly having second thoughts about getting a divorce from him because I do love him, but I know that right now leaving him would be the best choice for me, but for him it might lead to another breakdown and I don't know what to do. Am I the idiot for wanting to leave my husband when he's already going through a rough patch? Update 1. For days have passed since I posted, and I decided to go through with the divorce and told my lawyer that I wanted to file the petition. It was not an easy decision to make for me because I genuinely used to think that Peter was my soulmate, but in light of recent events, I don't think I can go on pretending to believe that because it's obviously not true. If it had been, he never would have said the things that he said, and no matter how hard I try, I just can't get it out of my head. His behavior recently has been terrible, and I'm not the kind of woman who is going to put up with this just because I love him, and he needs to realize that. Maybe there are better people than me with bigger hearts who would be willing to forgive in such situations, but that is not me, and I feel really sorry for us, both of us, since neither of us had wanted things to end this way, but it is what it is. After the message that Peter had sent me a few days ago, I didn't reply to it for a couple of days, but yesterday I told him that I was really sorry, but I had decided that I was going to go through with a divorce because I couldn't be with him anymore. Even if I wanted to, things would never go back to the same way that they were before all of this took place, and maybe it was better for both of us to try and move on because clearly neither of us were happy with each other anymore. I told him that I hoped that he would understand, and then I blocked him because I didn't want to hear back from him again because this is quite difficult for me as it is. I didn't want it to get worse. I've been miserable, but thankfully my parents have been very supportive, and they think that I'm doing the right thing for myself. I don't know if it's the right thing for Peter, but that's his lookout now. Update 2. So Peter was served with the divorce papers today, almost 5 days after we filed the petition, and he came over in the evening. He had a bunch of bags with him, and when I opened the door to him, he told me that he had packed all my things that I had left behind in the house and brought them all to me because I would probably be needing them. I could tell that he was very upset and had probably been crying in the car before he came here, but I didn't want to discuss it because that would just make things unnecessarily awkward and difficult. But he wanted to talk about it. So while I was bringing the bags inside, he asked me how we managed to go from planning a baby a couple of weeks ago to getting divorced now, and I honestly did not know how to answer that. I still tried though, and I told him that he had been quite unkind to me, and by the time he realized that I was right, it was way too late for us to fix things. He tried telling me that it was not too late since the divorce had only been filed and it hadn't actually been finalized. We could still try couples counseling and try to make it work. But I shut it down instantly. For couples counseling to work, both of us would have to be willing to try and make it work, and I wasn't willing to do that anymore. I had kept my dignity and self-respect several times in the past, but I wasn't willing to do that anymore because at some point you just start feeling like a pushover and a complete doormat, and just because I loved him, it did not give him the right to walk all over me and not expect me to stand up against it. So while it was really sad that we had gone from planning a family to getting a divorce in just a couple of months, I think it was for the best that we hadn't actually gotten pregnant because it would have only complicated things even more. Then, once all the bags had been brought inside, I tried to wish him the best for the future and say goodbye to him, but he had already turned around and started to leave, so I ended up saying nothing and just shut the door after he left. I don't think he realizes that this is just as difficult for me as it is for him and has only been thinking about himself, which I think is pretty selfish. It just makes me believe that I'm doing the right thing by getting a divorce because if I had actually decided to have a baby with him, I'm pretty sure he would have been just as self-centered, and my personal life and mental health would have gone for a toss. I know that he was trying to kind of emotionally manipulate me into coming back by bringing up the topic of starting a family, believing that maybe that would make me reconsider everything, but it had the opposite effect, and now I'm even more determined to end this marriage as soon as possible. Update 3. So 2 months have passed since I filed for a divorce, and today we finally managed to get it finalized. We don't really have a waiting period here in my state, so things were wrapped up relatively quickly. I'm very grateful for all the help from my lawyer to make the mediation sessions as easy and peaceful for me as possible, because I had been having a very hard time coming to terms with the divorce emotionally, and was on the verge of crying every time I would have to see him. As much as I want to deny it, I can't say that I don't love him anymore, but ultimately that didn't matter because I think everyone knows that you need more than just love to make a marriage work. I know for a fact that even he loves me because he handed me a letter today and told me to read it once I got home, and I did. In the letter, he basically just apologized for everything that he had put me through and told me that I deserved way better, and he was too late to realize it, but now that he knew, he was going to try and become a better man, so maybe in the future if I wanted to, then we could give this another shot since he can't imagine his life with anybody else apart from me. He told me that he would love to be friends and at least be a part of my life in any capacity that he could because he didn't want to completely lose me, but he would understand if I was not open to it right now. He just wanted me to keep an open mind and think about it for the future, and I guess I will do that. But right now, I need my space, and I need to be away from him to move on and heal. I'm hopeful that maybe something in the future, when circumstances are better and he is a changed man, we might be able to make it work. But for now, I just want to focus on my new business and be free for a while. All our assets and money have been divided, and I'm pretty sad, but I'm trying to cope with it. I'm taking one day at a time like most people have advised me to, and I don't know how things are going to turn out in the future, but I know that right now I have done what was best for me, and I'm going to try and not have any regrets. I'm going to start this new chapter of my life by channeling all my energy into my business, which I started because I hadn't been able to find anything that I liked in the job market. So I created a job for myself, and fingers crossed, life will go well now. Now on to the next story. Story 9. My husband was acting weird with my flirty best friend at a birthday party, so I accused him of cheating. I, 31F, have a deep suspicion that there is something weird going on between my husband, 33M, and my best friend, Maria, 30F. My husband feels I'm just seeing things and is mad at me that I do not trust him enough. Please tell me if what is going on is just in my head, or if you also find the situation from last weekend suspicious. Maria and I have been best friends since college. She has always been very outgoing, while I am more of an introvert. Maria was always a bit promiscuous and loved drama. She had a lot of boyfriends/hookups in college. She is also very beautiful, and I always felt invisible when I was around her. I have weight issues. I always felt overshadowed by her. I was always very shy, and my husband was the first person I ever dated. Maria always teased me that I had only been with one guy in my life. As we have grown older, Maria is still yet to be in a real long-term relationship. I feel that things have reversed now, and she keeps on telling me how lucky I am to have such an ambitious and reliable husband by my side. Around 6 months ago, my husband came to me and told me that he felt Maria was trying to flirt with him. He does not like Maria but tolerates her for me. During one of the dinner parties, Maria was acting very flirty around my husband. She was just laughing extra loudly at all his jokes, complimenting his fitness, and touching him on the shoulders and arms. My husband told me that he felt uncomfortable with her behavior and asked me to talk to Maria. I was pissed off and talked to Maria. She got angry at me and said that she had known my husband for over a decade, and he is like a brother to her. She felt my husband was trying to destroy our friendship because he did not like her. I felt she was genuine and let it go. Maria soon joined our gym because she wanted to take yoga classes with me. However, she spent more time in the weights room where my husband is. Again, my husband made comments about how she is always half naked in the gym and asked him to spot her. Maria complained that my husband was being rude and unhelpful to her. I again took her side and told my husband to be helpful and nice to her, as she is my best friend. My husband said he would make more effort. I slowly started seeing them getting more and more friendly and working out together. I wanted to be cool but felt jealous. So, now to what happened last weekend. Maria invited a bunch of her friends for a birthday party at her apartment. There were 7 guests there, including my husband and me. Maria kept on pushing tequila shots on all of us. Eventually, most of us got drunk. Maria was sitting next to my husband and was being very flirty with him, but I could see my husband not reciprocating, so I didn't care. Maria insisted we stay back at her place, and my husband and I slept in the guest bedroom. The other 3 guests, who were her co-workers, 1 guy and 2 girls, crashed on the sofas in the living room. I was drunk, and the last thing I remember was my husband bringing me to the guest room. When I woke up in the middle of the night, I was alone in bed. I could hear some moaning noises from outside. I quickly started looking for my phone in the dark. In that process, I dropped something from the nightstand on the floor. The noises stopped, and I heard a door open and close outside. I quickly got up to see where my husband was. When I reached the hallway, I saw my husband just in his jeans with no shirt on. I asked him where he was, and he said he went to the restroom and asked if I was okay. I said yes, and he came and slept next to me. He was sweaty. I asked him where his shirt was, and he said that the heater was too high and he felt hot. His t-shirt was on a chair next to the bed. I lay down, but I was barely able to sleep after that. I got up early and went into Maria's room, and she was sleeping alone, naked. I told her we were taking off, and she got up to see us off. I kept this all to myself, and when we reached home and my husband went to take a shower, I immediately checked his phone. I could not find any messages between him and Maria. I spent the whole day thinking about it and finally confronted my husband regarding it at night. He was pretty angry at me and told me that he hates Maria, and the only reason he tolerates Maria is because of me. I told him about the moaning noises, and he said he also heard the same when he went to the restroom but thought they were coming from the living room. He is still angry at me that I could accuse him of something so horrible and has told me that if I am really that insecure, I should cut off my friendship with Maria. He also told me that he was never going to be in the same room as Maria ever again. I have no idea what to do. On one hand, I know my husband would never cheat on me, but it's just impossible to get the doubts out of my head. I keep on picturing my husband and Maria together in her bed. Am I wrong to confront my husband and accuse him of cheating just because of what I saw and not having any real proof? How do I know what happened? If I confront Maria and accuse her, she is also going to be equally mad at me. I don't know her coworker friends well enough to trust what they say. I just feel stupid for trying to push for friendship between my husband and Maria. Please help. Now for some comments. Comment 1. Maria isn't your best friend. I say that sincerely as someone else who had best friends my whole life who were similar to Maria. I had a best friend like this who was prettier, funnier, more outgoing, better with men, everything in college. My boyfriend also didn't like her. She also tried to flirt with him. I also worried about this. I was wrong. My boyfriend didn't cheat on me, and it's unlikely your husband cheated on you with her if he dislikes her so much. Much more likely his story is correct, that he was hot and took his shirt off. Drinking makes you feel hot on top of having a heater on and sleeping. Listen, as someone who has been through this, put some distance between yourself and Maria. You don't have to cut her out 100%, but maybe take her down to about 20%. But we've been through so much together. Yeah, I know, but what's even better than that is having friends who you aren't worried want to steal your husband. Judgment. Maria is an asshole, husband is NTA, you are to be determined. Take this as a chance to apologize and move on. If you don't, you would be the asshole. OP. Thanks. Needless to say, I will increase our distance from Maria. I feel threatened by her, especially since I see her flirting with my husband, and I am not okay. She does the same thing with most other men, and hence I always chalked her behavior up to this is how she is. I hope what you are saying is true about my husband. I feel the fact that I just can't get it out of my head, and it's been almost 5 days since the incident, makes me very anxious. I have apologized to my husband, and he says it's okay, but I can see he is still angry at me. Update 1, March 13th, 2024. I had posted about a month ago regarding suspecting my husband and my best friend, Maria, sleeping together while I was drunk and passed out in another room. A lot happened during the last month, and my mental health is at its lowest due to the betrayals. However, I think I now know what happened that night. I am sorry for the long post. So, the day after my husband and I stayed at Maria's house for her birthday party, I was unable to shake the feeling that something happened between them. I am not proud, but I checked my husband's phone and all his messaging apps. I only found a brief chat between my husband and Maria on Facebook Messenger. Maria thanked my husband for coming to her birthday party and for such a great night. She sent him a photo of them hugging at the end of the night after I was asleep. My husband told Maria that I suspected that something happened between them and asked her to talk to me. Maria told him that she would talk to me. Maria called me the next day and told me that I was crazy and she would never think of doing such a thing to me. She sounded convincing, but I just couldn't shake the gut feeling that something happened. I told her why I suspected them, and she called me crazy and that my head was making up stuff that did not exist. I also mentioned that I saw her photo with my husband after I was asleep, and she should have kept her distance from him. I decided to distance myself from her as I no longer trusted her as a friend. We also changed the times we went to the gym so that we don't run into her. After a week or so, she messaged my husband on Facebook Messenger that they should tell me the whole truth. My husband kept on asking her what she was talking about, but she kept on telling him that she felt guilty. My husband came to me and told me that Maria is sending messages to him, and he is not sure what she is inferring. He kept on assuring me that nothing happened between them that night. I told him that I read their secret chats on Facebook Messenger. He gaslighted me, calling me insecure and that Maria was trying to play with my head. I finally decided to go to Maria's house and ask her what was going on. Maria initially kept on saying that she did not want to talk about it. However, finally she broke down and told me what happened. She told me that during the night of the birthday party, my husband kept on staring at her. After they realized I was too drunk, he took me to the bedroom and again went back to the living room. At this point, he was sitting next to Maria and kept on touching her legs playfully. Maria was also very drunk, and they decided to call it a night in 30 minutes. Maria said that my husband followed her to her room and he started undressing her, and they were intimate together. She told me that she was too drunk to consent to anything and felt like he assaulted her. She kept quiet to keep peace, but it was bugging her from inside. I asked her if she was sure she was too drunk that night, and she said that although she was drunk, she remembers all the details. I confronted my husband, but he still kept on telling me that what he was telling was the truth and Maria never liked him and was playing me for a fool. He was so angry at me that he left the house and is currently living in a hotel nearby. He keeps on calling me and asking me to trust him, but I don't know how I can trust him now. I never expected him to do such a thing. Maria has also been trying to talk to me and asking me to be there to support her. However, I do not know if I can look at either one of them. I am just going to try and cope with the situation and plan to go and live with my parents for a few days until my husband and I agree about our future. I know you all thought I was crazy in the previous post, but I knew in my gut that something was wrong and never expected my life to suddenly come to this point. Comment where OP replied. Comment. If you're looking for some honesty, have you noticed that your friend's version of the story just so happens to make your husband look like the bad guy and her completely innocent and a victim after her messaging that they should come clean and that she feels bad? Which one is it? Does she feel bad about what she did or was just a victim? It smells a little like bullshit. The thing is, I don't know what to believe. On one hand, I trust my husband. However, my mind just won't let go of the image of them hooking up that night, and it haunts me like a nightmare. How would I even know who is telling the truth? I am just going mad at this point, trying to think of every small detail that I might be missing. I have told my husband I need some time, and he understands. However, he also asks how can he prove something that never happened. Update 2, March 22, 2024. I posted about my husband and my best friend, Maria, having an affair, although I did not have any solid proof that anything happened. My friend came clean and told me that my husband assaulted her while she was drunk. I initially did not know who to believe and thought my friend was telling the truth. My husband was upset that I did not trust him and left the house to stay at a hotel. After posting the update, I read the comments until 4 a.m. and cried uncontrollably. I let my insecurities and crazy trust Maria when it was clear that my husband was telling the truth. Sorry for the long post. You helped me so much and might have saved my life. For the few people who sent me vile messages. I am mentally unstable, but that does not mean I need to end my life. I was not always insecure. When I met my husband a decade ago, we were both overweight. He never cared about my weight as long as I was happy. A year before we married, I had an idea where we lose weight before our wedding date. He took his fitness seriously and lost 40 pounds that year, while I was not disciplined and did not lose any. Our wedding photo looks like Ryan Reynolds is marrying Princess Fiona from Shrek. This made me insecure about my weight. It did not help that my mom and Maria kept on telling me that I needed to lose weight, or else he would leave me for someone more beautiful. The question in my mind was not if he would leave me, but when. He knows my struggles and has always been supportive and loving towards me. I went to meet him in the morning, and I have never seen him so broken. I started apologizing and crying, and he was trying to calm me down for almost an hour. I told him I trusted him completely and apologized that I did not see it sooner. He just looked stone-faced. He said he knew I would trust him eventually, but he is worried about Maria. He kept checking his social media because he was scared she might post about it. He said he could not imagine what his parents, friends, and coworkers would think if they saw the accusations. He told me that we need to talk to Maria to not spread such lies. I told him in detail what Maria told me, and he told me what happened that night. He said that I fell asleep on his lap around 1:30 a.m. He woke me up and took me to the bedroom. He came out to say goodbye to everyone, but the party was already dying. My husband was not drunk. He generally never drinks more than 1 to 2 drinks ever. But Maria and her friends were very drunk. Maria wanted to take some final pictures and went to everyone and made silly poses. That was the photo she sent to my husband. She asked my husband if he could come with her to the bedroom to get some blankets and pillows for others. My husband told her he needed to check on me, and the other male coworker volunteered to go with her and get stuff. My husband then came to the room and slept. He woke up 2 hours later and went to the restroom. He confirmed that he heard the moaning noises, but they had stopped when he came out of the restroom. We decided to talk to Maria, and I invited her to our house on Saturday evening. She was shocked to see my husband with me in the house. My husband told her that she knew what she was saying was wrong, and he still had the messages where she thanked him the next day. Maria got defensive and started telling me that she blacked out that night, but later slowly started to put together what happened at night. Since she was naked when she woke up, she asked me why she would sleep naked without locking the room door when her coworkers were in the next room. She said that she remembers my husband coming to her room and having sex with her while she was extremely drunk. My husband told Maria that none of this happened, and she kept on insisting that she clearly remembered him naked and having sex with her. He told her if that was true, "Tell me how big his penis was." She was taken aback and shouted to him, "Just because it was huge does not mean I enjoyed the sex and that she was extremely drunk." I asked Maria if she was sure, and she said she would never forget it. The thing is, my husband is noticeably smaller than average in that area. I am not complaining as he always gets the job done, but I knew Maria was full of shit. A screaming match began between Maria and me, and I told her she was full of shit and to get out of my house. I told her that if she accused my husband, I would stand by him and tell everyone I was in the next room and none of this happened. Maria was crying at this moment and told me to enjoy my life with a rapist. I hugged my husband, but he still looked void of any emotions. He told me not to freak out, but he had planned to visit his parents' house to reset his head. Before I talked to him, I wanted to be with him, but he insisted he wanted to be alone for a week and would be back on Saturday. He also called my mom to come to our house so I am not alone. We told her what happened, and she was very angry at me. I've been talking to him all week on the phone, and he plans to return tomorrow. I feel lucky and undeserving of such a good husband and cannot believe I was so close to losing him. I have not heard from Maria, but at this point, our friendship is over. Again, thanks to everyone who sent well-meaning messages to me all through the week. I truly appreciate it. I have signed up for therapy this week and hopefully will be able to be a better wife to my husband forever. Update 3, July 11th, 2024. I received a lot of messages today morning asking what happened. Not sure why, so I will just briefly write what happened here instead of replying to everyone. My husband left the house to be with his parents the day after I wrote the post. I became really paranoid after reading all the comments that he may never come back. He assured me that he will be back soon, but I just became paranoid and went there. We had a lot of heart-to-heart discussions, and he told me how hurt he was that I chose to listen to Maria instead of backing him up. I told him how I made a terrible mistake and I would never doubt him again. We came back home after a week. After coming home, my husband and I still kept on talking about the incident. Maria went no contact with us for a week and then suddenly started calling me and messaging me if she could meet me. I had decided to cut her off from our lives. However, my husband told me that there is a very high chance that her coworker might have assaulted her and she did not remember things correctly. We discussed it, but my husband insisted that I should at least hear her side before deciding to break friendship with her. He also told me that she was not welcome in our house anymore, and he will never forgive her. He suggested that I should meet her in a public place. I agreed and called Maria to meet at a coffee shop one evening. Maria cried a lot and apologized to me for the whole thing. She said that she was very drunk by the end of the night. She remembered me passing out on the sofa and my husband taking me to the room. She also remembered asking my husband for help with getting some stuff from the bedroom. She said that she woke up naked and could feel she had sex. She has memories of my husband having sex with her. However, after our fight, she started thinking if they were just drunk and false memories. The only other guy in the house was her coworker. She confronted him, and he told her the truth. What happened according to him? He came to her bedroom to get the pillows and bedding. Maria kissed him and they made out. After everyone went to sleep, her coworker went back to her room after an hour, and they had sex. Her coworker told her that she asked him to come to her room after everyone was asleep, and that is why he went back. He also told her that she was awake when he went to her room. She was the one who initiated everything. Maria did not say anything to him in the morning or talk about it afterwards. He felt that Maria wanted to just get drunk and hook up and was uncomfortable talking about it later. Maria was very apologetic and told me that she was very drunk and her mind just convinced her that my husband was with her that night. I asked Maria if she likes my husband and if she really meant to kiss my husband that night. She told me that she would never do that to me. She told me that she felt so guilty about the whole thing and also messaged my husband to confess everything to me. She says that if she liked my husband, why would she ask him to confess everything to me instead of just carrying on with the affair secretly? She said that she likes my husband as a friend but would never dare to do anything that would cause me pain. I feel her story makes sense. I told my husband about what happened. He also felt that it made sense that it was the coworker who went to her room that night, and as he was the same height and build as my husband, she might have constructed the false memories in her mind. He told me that I could be friends with Maria as it was my choice, but he can never forget the hell she put him through for those 2 weeks that almost cost us our marriage. He said that he forgives Maria, but he will never forget what she did. Maria called him on the phone to apologize, and he told her he forgives her. However, he also told me that he will never interact with Maria without me being present. Maria started dating the coworker after the incident for a few months, but he cheated on her, and now Maria is single again. I was her shoulder to cry on after she broke up with him, and I felt that brought us back closer. She is so beautiful but has the worst luck with men. I signed up for therapy myself and am really working on my low self-esteem and anxiety issues. I have also lost a lot of weight in the last 3 months, and it has helped my mental health tremendously. I still have a long way to go, but my husband's unconditional love for me does give me confidence that I must be doing something right. I also felt bad commenting about my husband's private parts in the last post. All I can say is he is more than enough for me, and I love him a lot and would never change anything about him. The silver lining. As I know Maria is a blabbermouth and must have told all my friends about it. My husband is a very handsome man, and I was always worried about my friends hitting on him. However, I feel now they will be less keen to flirt with him again. I know I am not perfect, and I am working really hard to improve myself. Now for some comments. OP. On the conversations Maria told her about between the coworker and herself. OP. Yeah, that was weird to me too. She described she was too drunk to remember anything but believed her coworker when he told her that she initiated everything. However, it's her life. She has the worst taste in guys and always dates lazy guys. Commenter. Maria sounds a little toxic, and I think sometimes friendships should just end. It's not anyone's fault, but personally, I wouldn't put my husband in that position. Yes, he said he was okay with it, but he shouldn't have to be okay with you keeping a relationship with someone who falsely accused him. OP. Yes, my husband does not hang out with Maria in the gym or other places anymore. In fact, he has only seen her once in person at my parents' place where Maria was also invited. I also avoided her for a while but felt bad for her after her coworker cheated on her. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.